Chapter 953. Lin Sun's voice was inviolable. In fact, he was not as calm as he looked. He didn't expect that after swallowing a moth king, the 9 spirit-eating bugs had more than one metamorphosis, and by chance, a special spirit-eating bug with the potential to become a king was cultivated. According to the secluded star insect mastery, the probability of this happening was extremely rare, and it was 1 in 10,000 in ancient times. This special spirit-eating bug, also known as larval king bug, generally only appeared when the spirit-eating bugs evolved to the 3rd stage. The larval king bug was extremely domineering and unique. When it was born, it would swallow all other spirit-eating bugs and refine them into its own potential. Moreover, it had begun to awaken its independent consciousness. Like a crown prince, it had its own dignity and pride and was extremely resistant to being raised and used by others. In ancient times, there had been cases of larval king bugs rebelling against its owner. Lin Sun was not worried at first, because the secluded star insect mastery recorded a special method to control and use larval king bug. But Lin Sun never thought that before he had time to prepare, a larval king bug was born among those spirit-eating bugs when he just advanced to the 2nd stage. This surprised Lin Sun and made him a little unprepared. He couldn't help but feel nervous. It was not easy for him to raise a larval king bug. If he let it slip away, all his efforts would be wasted. Buzz, the spirit-eating bug, became more and more impatient, and its sesame-sized dark silver body emitted circles of obscure fluctuations. Then, a childish voice resounded in Lin Sun's sea of consciousness. "Master, I am not ungrateful. I will repay your kindness in the future. Now, I have awakened the potential to become a king, and I should find the way to become a king by myself instead of betraying you." "Nonsense," Lin Sun disdained. "You are just an ungrateful wolf after all." "Master, I prefer death to humiliation. How can you desecrate my dignity with an ungrateful wolf?" The spirit-eating bug was indignant and expressed its protest. Lin Sun was in a trance and instantly realized that this was an extremely proud guy. It didn't want to eat for free with him, so it planned to leave alone. And this little guy attached great importance to dignity and reputation, which could not be desecrated. Little Silver. Suddenly, Lin Sun let out a sigh. "Speaking of which, I've suffered a lot to get you here. I'm very reluctant and don't understand why you want to leave. You have to be considerate." "Little Silver? Master, this name is too." The God-Eater bug felt a chill run down its spine, and it seemed to be slightly unable to accept it. "Don't interrupt, listen to me first." Lin Sun frowned and then sighed. "It's fine if you want to leave, but don't come back in the future. From now on, you and I will break off all ties and have no contact with each other. I will fulfill your wish and fulfill your dream of becoming a king." "Master, The spirit-eating bug was very conflicted and hesitant. Lin Sun sighed. "Let's go. You don't have to feel guilty or indebted." The spirit-eating bug was speechless. How could it not feel guilty? "Master, The spirit-eating bug took a deep breath and was about to make a decision. But Lin Sun had already said first, "It's still early, and you don't have to make a decision in a hurry. You've just finished your transformation. Why are you in a hurry to leave now? Why don't you stay and think about this problem first? It's not too late to make a decision when you've completely figured it out." His words were sincere and gentle, like the attentive and meticulous exhortations of an elder. The spirit-eating bug was stunned and a little confused. It didn't know what Lin Sun was up to. What he said was too confusing. "Master, then." The spirit-eating bug felt that its head was tangled into a ball, and its newly awakened consciousness became confused. "Little Silver, stay here first. When you think it over, I will give you the freedom you want," Lin Sun said with hope in his tone. "Okay." In the end, the spirit-eating bug gritted its teeth and agreed. Lin Sun was delighted. Before he spoke, the spirit-eating bug made a request with awe-inspiring righteousness. I have a condition. Say it. Don't call me Little Silver anymore. The spirit-eating bug said one word at a time. What a terrible name! Lin Sun was stunned and couldn't help but say, "Of course, no problem." At the same time, Lin Sun withdrew his divine senses. Only then did he notice that Miss Lo, who was sitting opposite him and pouring wine, was staring at him with a strange expression, as if she was staring at a fool. Lin Sun's old face was a little hot. He realized that he had just been coaxing and pestering to make the spirit-eating bug stay. But he had forgotten that Miss Lo had seen every change in his expression just now. "Sorry, I have something urgent to deal with. How about we talk another day?" Lin Sun said as he got up. He didn't have time to explain. "Okay." Miss Lo looked very understanding. However, as soon as Lin Sun walked out of the room, he heard Miss Li's long-suppressed laughter behind him. Lin Sun felt more and more embarrassed. It was conceivable that the change in his expression just now must have left a very deep impression on Miss Lo. How embarrassing! It was all Little Silver's fault. Lin Sun was so angry that he secretly ground his teeth. "Master, why did you imprison me here?" Little Silver was very confused. As soon as he returned, Lin Sun had directly locked him into his sea of consciousness and suppressed him with the secluded star bug mastery. Lin Sun smiled and said patiently, "Don't you think it's easier to think about things calmly this way? For example, whether you stay or leave." "But why do I feel like I'm imprisoned?" Little Silver said in a daze. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. This silly child was simply dim-witted. He still hadn't realized what was going on and was still clamoring to wander the world alone in search of Tao. Given his intelligence, he would be lucky not to be tricked to death. "Little Silver, I'm doing this for your own good. When you understand my good intentions, I won't worry about you anymore even if you leave." Lin Sun behaved like a teacher who was teaching Little Silver. "Master!" Little Silver was furious. "You promised not to call me that disgusting name again. How dare you go back on your word? You want to change your name? That's easy. When you understand, you can call me whatever you want." Lin Sun smiled very gently and amiably. Little Silver was silent. He seemed to realize that something was wrong with the situation. After a long time, he shouted, "Master, you've been lying to me from the beginning, haven't you?" However, no one responded to it. Lin Sun had decided to give this little guy a good lesson and kill his arrogance, so that he wouldn't want to wander the world alone in the future like a simple-minded, dim-witted person. How embarrassing would it be if he was tricked? "Master, you're too despicable, black-hearted, hypocritical, and shameless." Little Silver finally reacted and flew into a rage. As a spirit-eating insect with the potential to become a king, he naturally wasn't stupid. It was just that he hadn't experienced the treachery of the human heart, so his reaction was very slow. "Just you wait. If I get out, I'll make you regret it. It's no use apologizing," Little Silver shouted. No one responded. I've never seen such a shameless person." Still no one responded. Little Silver was about to go crazy. He felt hurt. He had trusted his master so much, but the other party was so shameless and despicable. In order to keep him here, he had deceived him without leaving a trace. This was simply too shameless. Little Silver was an extremely proud spirit-eating insect who valued dignity and glory very much. Being deceived like this made him so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. He had never thought that he would actually run into such a black-hearted master who didn't play by the rules. It was outrageous and deserving of disdain. "You're just a child. I'm doing this for your own good." This was Lin Sun's idea. He decided to leave this little guy alone for a few days to calm down and reflect. In any case, Lin Sun was very happy and relaxed that he had successfully kept Little Silver here. He decided to have a chat with Miss Lo. Miss Lo didn't seem surprised that Lin Sun returned not long after he left. She sat there and reached out her hand to pick up a plain jade wine pot. She filled the glass cup on the table to the brim and asked with a smile, "Did something happen to the spirit-eating insects?" The fragrance of the wine, with a hint of a unique sweet smell, filled the room. Although Miss Lee's aura was weak and sickly, her every movement, every frown, and every smile had a kind of elegant and leisurely taste that was pleasing to the eye. Lin Sun said in surprise, "Miss Lee's eyes are like torches. Nothing can be hidden from you." Miss Lu raised her glass and clinked it with Lin Sun's. Then she took a sip of the amber-colored, crystal-clear wine and said with a smile, "Child, you flatter me. I just happen to know something about spirit-eating insects and know that it's not easy to raise this kind of ancient strange insect." After some small talk, Miss Lu said frankly before Lin Sun could probe, "Child, you must be curious why I crossed the boundary river to go to Dongxing territory. It's very simple. I'm taking refuge. If nothing goes wrong, my pursuers will catch up with me soon." Lin Sun said, "I see." He had already guessed it, so it wasn't strange. "What I can tell you now is that I come from a sacred hermitage in Dongxing territory, and my pursuers are from an ancient country in Dongxing territory." Miss Lee's clear eyes were calm, and there was a hint of seriousness in her voice. She looked at Lin Sun and said, "That is to say, although I'm in the same boat as you, I don't have any hostility towards you. So you don't have to be vigilant against me." Speaking of this, she laughed at herself and said, "What's more, with my current weak state, it's impossible for me to harm you." The sacred hermitage. Lin Sun was shocked. This was the first person from the sacred hermitage that he had seen since he entered the ancient desolation realm. Previously, he had only heard of Xingzhenzi, the successor of the Dachan Lin Temple in the sacred hermitage, who was also known as the Little Western Paradise. "Miss Lu, pardon me for asking, but you seem to be very worried that I will have some kind of misunderstanding towards you?" Lin Sun said thoughtfully with a smile on his lips and a calm expression. Chapter 954. Miss Lu met Lin Sun's gaze and nodded calmly, "Yes." "Why?" Lin Sun was puzzled. Miss Lu smiled, revealing her sparkling teeth as her cherry lips curled into a meaningful arc. "If I'm not wrong, young master is probably in the same situation as me. Due to some kind of interference, he had no choice but to cross the boundary river." Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and smiled. "That's right." Speaking of this, Miss Lu raised her glass again and clinked it with Lin Sun's before draining it in one gulp. Her pale and beautiful face was flushed, adding to her beauty. Her clear eyes flickered as she said, "We're both in the same boat. I don't want to have any unnecessary misunderstandings with you." Lin Sun sighed with emotion. "Miss Lu is so intelligent and meticulous. I can't help but admire you." He already suspected that Miss Lu had already guessed his identity. But since she didn't expose him, he was happy about it. Miss Lu sat upright and still, exuding an elegant temperament. She said, "To be honest, I have some selfish motives in talking to you this time. I hope to cooperate with you." "Cooperation?" "Yes, you already know that I'm being hunted. Ko Xing and the others are far from being a match for the enemy," Miss Lu said. "So, I'd like to ask for your help." Lin Sun was speechless. "Don't think too highly of me, Miss Lu." Miss Lu gazed at Lin Sun with her clear eyes. "You don't have to be modest. There may be many people in this world who underestimate you, but I'm definitely not one of them. On the contrary, in my opinion, with your ability, you can make a name for yourself even in Dongxing domain." Lin Sun was stunned and thought that this woman had probably already seen through his identity. Otherwise, how could she speak so confidently? "Of course, we've met by chance and this is our first cooperation. As a gesture of sincerity, I'm willing to give you this. I believe you'll like it." As Miss Lu spoke, an object appeared in her fair and long right palm. It was a token shaped like a flying sword. It was simple in shape and engraved with complicated Taoist patterns, exuding an aura of age. "This is?" Lin Sun discerned with a single glance that this object was extraordinary. It was extremely ancient and it ought to have existed for a very long time. Moreover, it was actually inscribed with true markings of the Grand Tao, and this was too rare and precious. Could it be that young master has never heard of the great Tao hidden king token? Miss Lu seemed slightly surprised. Lin Sun shook his head. He really didn't know this thing. Miss Lu pondered for a moment and seemed to be relieved. She said, "In ancient times there was an extremely glorious period. At that time, the world was at peace, Tao techniques flourished, thousands of races stood tall, and hundreds of schools of thought contended. That period of time can similarly be called a great era. Extraordinary geniuses and geniuses from all over the universe emerged like carps in a river, and they vied for beauty. The prodigy gold ranking that caused all the heroes in the world to vie for the top spot was born at that time. Everyone in the world knows that only those experts who are truly ranked on the prodigy gold rankings can be called true prodigies. As for the other so-called prodigies, they will be eliminated in the end." Lin Sun listened carefully. He knew that since Miss Lu said so, it meant that the great Tao hidden king token she mentioned should be related to the battle of the Great Era, or even the prodigy gold rankings. Sure enough, Miss Lu said in the next moment, at that time, the prodigy gold rankings had such a great influence that it could even affect the future and structure of the entire younger generation. Even the orthodoxies in the Saint Hermit grounds couldn't sit still. Then, the great Tao hidden king token was born. Lin Sun was stunned. This turn of events was so fast that he couldn't react for a while. However, Miss Lu explained, the great Tao hidden king token is a means to recruit talented disciples for one's orthodoxies. Anyone who can be ranked on the prodigy gold rankings will have the opportunity to enter one of the orthodoxies in the Saint Hermit grounds to cultivate with this token. Lin Sun finally understood, and he couldn't help but be surprised. The Saint Hermit grounds was the most mysterious place in the world. It didn't just refer to a certain place, but was a general term for those orthodoxies that had retired from the secular world. What was the Saint Hermit grounds? It was the unworldly place where sages lived in seclusion. Such forces were even more mysterious and transcendent than the ancient orthodoxies that were known in the world, and their resources were the most terrifying as well. All of them had survived since ancient times. For example, the Diana Forest Temple, which was known as the Mini-Western Paradise, was an extremely mysterious ancient Pure Land of Buddhism in the Saint Hermit grounds. Not to mention mortals of the mortal world, even cultivators would practically be unable to see such a sect if they didn't have the guidance of others. It was like a sect that stood towering above the heavens, and it was extraordinary and extremely mysterious. Of course, ancient orthodoxies like the Heart Inquisition Sword House and the Heavenly Sword sect might not be inferior to the Saint Hermit ground. This was like the difference between the light and the dark. One stood towering in the world and deterred the world, while the other lived in seclusion and possessed a lofty status that was worthy of admiration. Perhaps the only difference was that there were numerous ancient orthodoxies in the world, and it was inevitable that good and bad were intermingled. They came in all shapes and forms, and their resources varied greatly as well. However, the Saint Hermit grounds were different. Any orthodoxy there was not inferior to the top orthodoxies in the world. This was just Lin Sun's superficial knowledge. As for how many Saint Hermit grounds there were in the ancient Desolation realm, and how many ancient orthodoxies there were, Lin Sun knew nothing about them. However, Lin Sun was still a little surprised when he heard that as long as one was ranked on the Tianjiao Golden List, he would have the opportunity to cultivate in one of the orthodoxies in the Saint Hermit grounds with the Great Way Hidden King token. As far as he knew, the Saint Hermit grounds never accepted disciples from the outside world. Almost all of their disciples were creatures that grew up in the Saint Hermit ground. After a short period of digesting, Lin Sun could not help but sigh with emotion. I didn't expect that the Saint Hermit grounds would have such harsh conditions to recruit disciples. Miss Lu smiled and said, The more ancient an orthodoxy is, the harsher it is to recruit disciples. As the saying goes, don't leak the Tao and don't impart the Dharma easily. For example, the Tao orthodoxy that I'm from has to undergo numerous strict selections and tests when passing down the mantle. There are tests that target one's character, disposition, nature, comprehension ability, natural talent, bloodline, and intelligence. There's even no lack of other tests. In short, if you want to get a powerful inheritance, you need to have the ability to match it. Lin Sun gasped. That is to say, the disciples who can get the inheritance in this way are more abnormal than the others, right? Abnormal? Miss Lu smiled and nodded. That's right. I've seen a true heavenly son. He's a descendant of the Baifeng clan. The moment he was born, he caused a phenomenon in the heavens and earth and grasped rare innate powers. I've also seen spirits and freaks that were born in the world and nurtured by nature. Their talents and knowledge are enough to make most of the heavenly talents in the world feel desperate. Lin Sun was speechless for a while. There was always someone better in the world. Do you feel like you've suffered a great blow? Miss Lu blinked her eyes and said with a smile, I've grown up in such an environment since I was a child. I'm used to it. If Yu Lingkong is in the Saint Hermit place, what kind of person is he? Lin Sun suddenly asked. He was really curious. Miss Lu took a deep look at Lin Sun as if she had expected him to ask this question. She said, Yu Lingkong was born in a family of sages and apprenticed to the pure land of longevity. His resources and talent are top-notch even in the Saint Hermit place. After a pause, she changed the topic and said, However, there are many people like him in every Saint Hermit place. He's not rare. Of course, compared with most of the other descendants, Yu Lingkong is already top-notch. It depends on who he is compared with. When she spoke up to hear, Miss Lu frowned and deliberated before she said, Actually, my understanding is very superficial. Every single Saint Hermit area in this world possesses a terrifying reserve that's unknown to others. But there's one thing I'm sure of. The Saint Hermit areas have existed since the ancient times, and they're able to stand towering until now after experiencing the passage of time. So, their reserves are so deep that they absolutely can't be underestimated. The Saint Hermit place really deserves its reputation. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. Listening to a wise man's words was better than reading books for 10 years. He had never learned about these secrets before. Child, in my opinion, your resources are not inferior to anyone in the world. The only thing you lack is this thing. Miss Lu held up the Great Law Hidden King token in her hand and said in a calm and serious tone, With this token, child has the opportunity to enter a certain orthodoxy in the Saint Hermit place to cultivate. In this way, even if you offend some forces in the future, you won't have to worry about being unscrupulously retaliated against. Lin Sun understood that Miss Lu said so much. In fact, it was nothing more than an opportunity to explain that with the Great Law Hidden King token, he would have a chance to seek a strong backer for himself. Of course, it was just an opportunity. Whether he could seize it or not depended on whether he could fight for it. This gift really made Lin Sun quite excited. Before, he was chased everywhere in the West Hung world and targeted by many ancient orthodoxies. Why? The reason for this was because he was all alone and had no one to rely on. Moreover, he didn't have any backing, and that was the reason why he was so unbridledly suppressed by his opponents. If he could enter a certain orthodoxy in the Saint Hermit place, his identity would change. He would no longer be alone. Anyone who wanted to target him in the future would have to think about the consequences of offending the orthodoxy behind him. The Great Law Hidden King token was an opportunity to change his identity and rely on a strong backer. Miss Lu probably saw this point, so she took out this thing as a gift. It could be said that she was very sincere. If it were any other practitioner, they would not refuse it. Lin Sun was also thinking. He couldn't help but be tempted. But he also understood that once he accepted this kind of sincerity, it was very likely to affect his future cultivation path and even change the trajectory of his future cultivation. Therefore, he had to consider it carefully. P.S. The following words are free of charge. The content of this chapter is very simple, but every sentence and paragraph is very difficult to write. It takes a lot of time and energy. I don't like to write this kind of plot the most, but for the development of the plot in the future, I must make a detailed foreshadowing. The Saint Hermit Place, the Tianjiao Golden List, and Lin Sun's future cultivation path all need a careful arrangement. I also hope that the readers don't think it is too plain. The story has ups and downs, so it has a soul-stirring charm. Chapter 955. The Realm River bobbed up and down as turbid waves surged into the sky. The treasure ship shuttled through it like a fish struggling to swim in the raging wave. Ko Xing and company were experienced. Although the journey was fraught with danger, it did not pose a problem for them. They managed to avoid danger after danger. In the room, Miss Lu sat upright and still. She poured wine and sipped by herself as she waited calmly. The Great Way Hidden King token was extremely tempting to every peerless elite in the world. If they could grasp the opportunity, they could enter a certain orthodoxy in the Saint Hermit grounds to cultivate. This was no less than a carp leaping through the dragon's gate. From then on, they could fly as high as they wanted. Their identity, status, and even the path of cultivation would undergo earth-shattering changes. However, to Miss Li's surprise, Lin Sun shook his head after a long while. "I can't accept this." "Why?" Miss Lu was taken aback. Lin Sun answered truthfully, "This item is of great importance. It's difficult for me to make a decision at the moment." "That's understandable." Miss Lu pondered for a moment before saying with a smile, "However, you don't have to reject it first. We'll only know if it's of use in the future." With that said, she handed the token to Lin Sun. "Young master, please don't reject it again. Just treat it as making a friend." Lin Sun drank a cup of wine and said with a carefree smile, "All right, I'll accept it." Following that, the two chatted as they drank. It was quite a pleasant conversation until 5 minutes later, when Lin Sun stood up and bade farewell. "Interesting. This demon god Lin isn't as arrogant and ferocious as the rumors say." Miss Lu sat there with her clear eyes in a daze as she fell into deep thought. Just as Lin Sun had guessed, she had long seen through Lin Sun's identity. However, after some interaction, she realized that demon god Lin wasn't arrogant or ferocious at all. Instead, he was humble and low-key, making it difficult for her to see through him. Those orthodoxies in the West Hung world are really stupid. They actually can't accept such a peerless elite. They will definitely regret it in the future. If possible, I can form a good relationship with him. After a long while, Miss Lu played with the wine cup in her hand as her lips curled into an indescribable smile. "This woman's means are really amazing. She's beautiful on the outside but intelligent on the inside. She's also experienced in the ways of the world. Her wisdom is close to that of a demon." At the same time, Lin Sun sighed with emotion in his heart, with a trace of appreciation in his black eyes. Coming into contact with smart people would unconsciously make people fearful. Miss Kola was different. She'd restrained her edge since a long time ago, and she treated others like the spring breeze and rain that nourished them silently, causing others to be utterly unable to arouse a trace of dislike towards her. This was remarkable. It was true wisdom. Interesting. She came from a certain Saint Hermit grounds and seems to know many secrets that others are unaware of. Her identity is bound to not be simple, Lin Sun was also thinking. From his previous conversation with Miss Lu, Lin Sun already knew that the enemies who were after her were from an ancient country called Aolai. The Aolai nation was located near a vast sea in the Dongsheng world. It had existed since ancient times and was also known as the ancient nation of all eras. According to Miss Li's words, Aeoli nation could already be considered a peak ancient power. It had a true sage overseeing it and had an extremely solid foundation. In the Aeoli nation, all the cultivation forces were under the control of the Sacred Flame sect. The king, the imperial teacher, and even the great figures of the nation were all disciples of the Sacred Flame sect. It could be said that the entire Aeoli nation was actually ruled by the Sacred Flame sect. Lin Sun was not interested in the Sacred Flame sect. What really surprised him was that Miss Lu came from a certain Saint Hermit grounds, but the Sacred Flame sect still dared to hunt her down. From this, it could be seen that the Sacred Flame sect's foundation was definitely not ordinary. As for why she was being hunted by the Sacred Flame sect, Miss Li's answer was very simple. The Sacred Flame sect is an unorthodox sect that harbors evil and brings disaster to the world. Everyone has the right to punish them. Lin Sun naturally did not believe this reason, but Miss Li's expression was very serious and solemn at that time, so Lin Sun did not pursue the matter. Lin Sun, I'm hungry. Xia Ji woke up, and her words woke Lin Sun up from his deep thoughts. At the same time, on the dangerous and unpredictable Boundary River, a treasured ship flowing with a dazzling golden luster was flying in the void. Although the Boundary River is dangerous, as long as we don't meet those damned remnant thoughts of the sage, we won't be too much of a threat. On the treasured ship, Shun Baixian spoke with a smile. He was very conceited. By the way, why did you enter the Boundary River this time? He turned his head to look at Loka, who was beside him. I'm looking for an opportunity. Loka held a bright red feather in his hand. The feather fluttered like a bloody rain, and there was a dark and bloody aura that made one's heart palpitate. It was extremely frightening. Shun Baixian recognized at a glance that this was the true-life feather of a dark blood-black phoenix. It was extremely mysterious and priceless, and it was a divine material for refining sage treasures. Moreover, this item contained the great Tao imprint of the dark blood-black phoenix, and it was also immeasurably useful for cultivation. Shun Baixian seemed to realize something and asked in surprise, "You're looking for a dark blood-black phoenix?" "No, it's a remnant soul of a dark blood-black phoenix." Luo Jia did not hide anything. According to my master's analysis, a dark blood-black phoenix, who had reached the saint stage, died in the Boundary River that leads to the Dongxing domain in ancient times. However, its soul did not dissipate. Instead, it was sealed in a mysterious relic in the Boundary River. If I can obtain it, I can obtain the Dark Phoenix Void Destruction Technique. Shun Baishuan's eyes surged with divine light, and he seemed to be moved. He said, "The Dark Phoenix Void Destruction Technique is one of the 9 scriptures of the Immortal Phoenix. Did you really awaken the power of your bloodline during the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival and grasp the profound meaning of the great Tao of the Immortal Phoenix?" Loka nodded with a calm expression. There was nothing to hide. Shun Baixian immediately lost his composure. The 9 scriptures of the Immortal Phoenix was composed of 9 supreme scriptures of the Phoenix Tao. In the ancient era, it could be called a world-suppressing inheritance, and it was close to being a legend. Each of them could be called a supreme secret inheritance, and the complete 9 scriptures of the Immortal Phoenix was even more incredible. It contained unimaginable mysteries. However, the 9 scriptures of the Immortal Phoenix had never truly appeared in its entirety since the ancient era. It was divided into 9 parts that were scattered all over the world, and no one had fused them until now. The most abnormal thing was that this Tao scripture was extremely obscure and supreme. Only the descendants of the Phoenix clan that controlled the power of the great Tao of the Immortal Phoenix could comprehend and control it. In other words, even if this Tao scripture was obtained by other cultivators, they could only observe it and not cultivate it. And it was obvious that Loka now had the qualifications to comprehend and learn the 9 scriptures of the Immortal Phoenix. This was what shocked Shun Baixian. At that time, Ji Xingyao comprehended the great Tao of supreme mystery, one of the 4 ultimate killing Taos. Yu Lingkong comprehended the great Tao of Green Lotus, also known as the true profound Tao of heaven and earth. Loka's voice was gentle and clear, like a clear spring flowing in a valley. He said slowly, "And I comprehended the great Tao of the immortal phoenix." Shun Baishuan's eyes flickered, and he sighed with a trace of regret. "These are all great Taos on the Supreme Tao list. Unfortunately, I missed such an excellent opportunity. In the ancient era, the saints of the world evaluated the great Taos of the world. They believed that out of the 3,000 great Taos, only 99 great Taos could be called Supreme Tao. Later on, the cultivators of the world listed these 99 great Taos in the Supreme Tao list, according to their profundities and power. This was the reason for Shun Baishuan's regret. With his status and identity, only the Supreme Tao could tempt him. By the way, what great Tao profundity did demon god Lin comprehend? Shun Baishin suddenly asked. It's suspected to be the Vortex Great Tao, but it's clearly different. It's very mysterious. Loka frowned. She still felt puzzled, and could not get an exact answer. Shun Baishin was taken aback. How could this be? No one else could tell? A strange look flashed across Luo Jia's eyes. That's right. No one saw it because the stone tablet he was comprehending was destroyed without a sound and disappeared. That's really strange. Shun Baishin was stunned. So, I advise you not to have any ideas about him. There are many mysteries about him that even I can't see through. Loka took the opportunity to remind him. Unexpectedly, these words stirred up Shun Baishuan's fighting spirit. He said excitedly, "The more such an opponent is, the more interesting it is. If he's too weak, I can't be bothered." Loka was speechless. At that moment, the sound of something tearing through the air sounded from afar. Luo Jia and Shun Baishin were immediately alarmed, and they looked at each other. Swoosh! The next moment, the two of them steered the treasured ship far away, concealing their tracks. Not long after, a narrow ship that was 300 meters long and seemed to be made of blood-red crystals whistled over from the sky. The surface of the ship was covered in dense spirit patterns, which turned into many sacred flame totems. It had a kind of intimidating power. On the ship, 6 half-step monarchs stood side by side. All of them were dressed in black robes and had a murderous and terrifying aura. Reporting to the priests, "We've locked onto that woman's aura. If nothing goes wrong, we'll be able to catch up to her in half an hour." A black-robed man prostrated on the ground and said in a low voice, "Prepare for battle. This time, we can't let her escape no matter what." The leader, an old man with white hair and a youthful face, said indifferently, "Yes." The black-robed man got up and hurried away. Very soon, the blood-colored ship that exuded a murderous aura shuttled through the void at an incredible speed. The priests and disciples of the Sacred Flame sect? What are they doing here? Shun Baishin appeared on the treasured ship with a surprised expression. The Sacred Flame sect was an ancient sect that was entrenched in the Aolai nation. Its history could be traced back to ancient times, and it had a long history. However, this sect didn't seem to have a good reputation. This was all Shun Baishin knew. Although the Aolai nation was also in the East Victory boundary, it had always occupied the depths of the vast ocean and was almost isolated from the rest of the world. There was very little news about this ancient nation of all ages in the outside world. Let's go and take a look. This Sacred Flame sect is very mysterious. For them to appear here, they must be planning to do something unspeakable. Without waiting for Loka's agreement, Shun Baishin had already steered the treasured ship and set off. Chapter 956. The blood-colored ship was about 300 meters long and was floating in the distance. On the ship, a group of cultivators with murderous auras looked over with indifferent expressions. They were led by 6 half-step King Realm cultivators, all of whom were dressed in black robes. Although they were standing there silently, the power they exuded was overwhelming and extremely terrifying. Ko Xing, green-faced assassin, and Qi Lian looked solemn and uneasy. Perhaps they could rely on their rich experience to deal with the dangers of the Boundary River, but against such a powerful group, they were helpless and felt despair. There was no other reason than the disparity in strength. This group of people had just rushed over and blocked their path. Needless to say, they were definitely here for Miss Lu. Trouble is coming. On the other hand, Miss Lu seemed very calm and sighed helplessly. She looked at Lin Sun. Look, these are the disciples of the Sacred Flame sect of Aolai Nation. The 6 old guys in the lead are the priests of the Sacred Flame sect. All of them are ruthless and have taken at least tens of thousands of lives. It's not an exaggeration to call them the executioners of the Sacred Flame sect. Lin Sun grunted in response as he sized them up. 6 half-step king realm cultivators and 18 reincarnation developing realm cultivators. This kind of force was indeed elite and huge, enough to make any expert below the king realm feel despair. But that didn't include Lin Sun. He just felt a little strange. The disciples of the Sacred Flame sect, whether they were at the half-step king realm or the reincarnation developing realm, all had a trace of gloomy and unique aura that made people feel very uncomfortable. Miss Lu, we meet again. As long as you hand over the Sacred Flame Source Stone, we might show you mercy and give you a quick death. On the blood-colored ship in the distance, the old man with white hair and a youthful face said indifferently, "You'd better not have any wishful thinking. This time, no one can save you." Sacred Flame Source Stone. Lin Sun was startled. Then, Miss Li's voice rang in his ears. "This is a sacred relic of the Sacred Fire sect. It contains the power of vow that they have absorbed from countless creatures in Aolai Nation over the years. It's crucial for them to refine some demonic weapons." At the same time, Miss Lu smiled faintly and looked at the blood-colored warship in the distance. She said, "The existence of the sacred Fire Dao Source Rock is a crime that harms the heavens and brings calamity to the masses. It is the source of evil and cannot be tolerated by the world. I'm enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens, yet you want to kill me. This is unreasonable. Don't try to argue." A half-step king realm expert shouted loudly with a voice that was like a thunderclap that resounded through the heavens and the earth. "Cut the crap. This woman refuses to come to her senses, so just kill her. As for her companions, they're helping the wicked commit evil, so they deserve death as well." The other half-step king realm experts spoke coldly as well. "Very well." The old man in the lead nodded, his expression cold. From the beginning to the end, they did not care about anyone other than Miss Lu. Obviously, whether it was Lin Sun or Ko Xing, they were all ignored and didn't take them seriously. This arrogant and cold attitude infuriated Ko Xing and the others, but at the same time, they felt extremely depressed. Even they had to admit that the other party had the ability to disregard them. Lin Sun could not help but frown. This Sacred Flame sect was really arrogant. They intended to kill all of them with just a few words. Obviously, they had done too many things that disregarded human lives in the past. Boom. However, no matter what Lin Sun thought, the other party had already made a move. A black-robed middle-aged man with the cultivation of half-step king realm stepped on the void and arrived. With a flip of his hand, a large black handprint pressed down, covering the sky and the earth. The sound of Dao rumbled and enveloped the treasured warship where Lin Sun and the others were. He seemed very indifferent and cold, high and mighty, like the master of life and death. Ko Xing and the others were on the verge of collapse. Even if they wanted to dodge and struggle, they could not summon any thoughts of resisting when faced with the suppression of a half-step king realm expert. Too strong. They were not on the same level at all. They were like tiny ants facing the merciless attack of a dragon in the sky. Even Miss Lu could not help but feel a little nervous at this moment. She did not expect that the Sacred Flame sect would send out 6 half-step king realm experts this time. Even though she was very optimistic about Lin Sun, her confidence was inevitably shaken at this moment. An imperceptible worry appeared between her brows. Lin Sun was still thinking whether he should adopt a way to ease the situation and resolve this sudden obstruction. After all, he had no enmity with the Sacred Flame sect. He just wanted to help Miss Lo, so it was not worthwhile to do something too out of line. But now, he changed his mind. From the very beginning, the other party had directly ignored them, treating them as if they did not exist. Now they actually wanted to kill all of them directly. How could Lin Sun tolerate that kind of indifferent, cold, and domineering attitude? It was conceivable how overbearing the other party was to make such a ruthless move when there was no enmity between them. In the blink of an eye, when the other party attacked, Lin Sun had already attacked. Using ice drake steps, his figure soared into the sky and punched out. The black-robed middle-aged man seemed a little surprised. At this time, there was actually a young man in the Tao Insight realm who dared to stand out. He was really reckless. Immediately, he understood, and a touch of disdain appeared on his indifferent face. He sensed that Lin Sun's aura had instantly reached the middle reincarnation developing realm from the Tao Insight realm. It turned out to be a guy who deliberately hid his strength, but was this the reason why he dared to stand out and fight against him? That's really not good enough. The black-robed middle-aged man looked indifferent, as if he saw a moth flying into the fire. There was no pity, no sympathy, and even no interest in him. As a half-step King Realm expert, he already had the power to look down on the cultivators of the 5 realms. Over the years, he had killed countless reincarnation developing realm practitioners, so why would he care about such resistance? On the blood-colored warship in the distance, a group of Sacred Flame sect priests and disciples also looked indifferent. They had seen a lot of struggle and resistance. Perhaps this was the only thing that every strong person could do before they died, so they were already used to it. Ko Xing and the others were dumbfounded. They did not expect that Lin Xia would be so unyielding at this time. He would rather die than wait for death. Boom! The black-robed middle-aged man's palm had already slapped down, covering the sky and the earth, without any change. Boom! At the same time, Lin Sun also punched out, simple, plain, and without a trace of fire and fire. Then, a scene that no one had expected happened. Lin Sun's fist force easily smashed the sky-covering black palm print, as if it was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Boom! The sound of the explosion resounded, and the palm force turned into a sky full of light rain and collapsed with earth-shattering momentum. No. On the blood-colored warship in the distance, everyone's pupils shrank. Ko Xing and the others were dumbfounded. That was a blow from a half-step King Realm expert, but it was so easily resolved? No wonder he is the demon god Lin who stirred up the Shiheng world. Miss Lu praised in her heart. The black-robed middle-aged man's pupils suddenly shrank, and he suddenly realized the power of this punch, which was completely different from what he had expected. However, he was, after all, a half-step King Realm expert. He was calm and cool in the face of danger. This little accident could not make him panic at all. Bang! The fist force emanated a dazzling glow, and it had already crushed through space as it whistled towards the black-robed middle-aged man. It's not bad that you were able to deal with a strike of mine. I can give you a dignified death, said the middle-aged man in an icy cold voice. His expression was still supreme, arrogant, and proud as if he was giving alms. As he spoke, he took the initiative to move forward and press his palm forward. Space suddenly collapsed while the heavens and the earth wailed, and a strand of terrifying force surged out from his palm. It was like a dragon leaving its lair, and it threw the world into disorder. This was the might of a half-step King Realm expert. Even though he wasn't a true king, he stood above the 5 great realms and possessed the might to look down upon others. But, at the instant his palm force collided with Lin Sun's fist, the middle-aged man realized that he was wrong. His originally indifferent and arrogant expression had vanished, and it was replaced by a wisp of shock. He seemed to be filled with disbelief, and the space between his brows even carried a trace of imperceptible panic. But he didn't have the time to do anything. Rumble. The terrifying force of the fist was like a landslide and a tsunami, and it carried an unparalleled and all-powerful force as it instantly crushed his palm force. After that, under the middle-aged man's gaze of disbelief, this fist smashed fiercely onto his body. Bang! At this critical moment, he'd already utilized the entire strength of a half-step king realm expert to defend himself, yet he still felt pain throughout his entire body while the bones in his chest suddenly broke and emanated cracking sound. After that, his entire body was blasted flying like a kite that had its string cut. During this entire process, blood sprayed from his mouth and nose, his face warped, his chest collapsed, and his back bent like a cooked prawn. In the end, the middle-aged man couldn't help but let out a shrill cry that resounded through the sky. All of this took a long time to describe, yet it actually occurred in an instant. From the beginning until the end, Lin Sun merely punched out once. He first shattered a palm print that blotted out the sky, and then he smashed another palm force with irresistible force before finally smashing onto the middle-aged man. All along the way, it was unstoppable. The whole place was silent. Whether it was the people of the Sacred Fire sect on the Scarlet Warship or Koxing, they all felt as if they'd been struck by lightning at this moment. Their pupils dilated and they couldn't believe their eyes. It was too fast. It was too unexpected. A young man who was regarded as a moth flying into the fire had blown away a half-step king realm expert with a single punch, showing an invincible momentum. Only Miss Lu knew that the middle-aged man in the black robe was completely courting his own death. He regarded Lin Sun as an insignificant ant trying to shake a tree. But he didn't know that Lin Sun was not an ant, but the fierce demon god Lin. If the middle-aged man in the black robe had taken it seriously, he might not have been defeated so quickly. However, he was so conceited and careless. Wasn't he courting his own death? Of course, the middle-aged man's carelessness was the main reason. But at the same time, it was also because Lin Sun's combat power was so powerful that it was far beyond his peers. As early as when he entered the ancient Desolation Realm, he was able to defeat Lin Taizhen of the Divine Fox clan of Green Mountains, who was also a half-step king realm expert. Chapter 957. In any case, Miss Lu was secretly relieved by Lin's performance, but she couldn't help feeling surprised. Even if the black-robed middle-aged man was careless, not every practitioner in the reincarnation development realm could do this. The black-robed middle-aged man was screaming in anger. His chest had collapsed, and he was seriously injured. He still couldn't believe it. On the Scarlet Ship, the people of the Sacred Fire sect were restless and also couldn't believe it. Boom. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He didn't say a word. From beginning to end, the black-robed middle-aged man was arrogant and regarded him as a fish on the chopping block. At this moment, he also didn't want to say a word. When he defeated the black-robed middle-aged man, he rushed out like lightning. Lin Sun had killed people of the half-step king realm before. Bastard, you're courting death. Seeing Lin Sun rushing towards him, the black-robed middle-aged man roared. His eyes were about to crack, and his face was cold and terrible. A horrible breath spread from him like a tide. This was the power of the half-step king realm. At this moment, he no longer underestimated Lin Sun. He wanted to kill Lin Sun to wash away his shame. He controlled the black fire and released a powerful breath that could burn the sky and destroy the earth. He rushed towards Lin Sun with amazing power. Divine flame burning the sky. The black-robed middle-aged man roared and pressed his palms and fingers. Black flames emerged all over the sky. They were incomparably blazing and drowned the void. Boom! Lin Sun's black eyes flashed like lightning. He didn't retreat at all. His figure rose like an ice dragon and displayed the profound meaning of the 9 strikes for shaking heaven. His fist was bright like the sun, with unparalleled spirit. In a flash, the black-robed middle-aged man coughed up blood again. His attack was crushed. Instead of hurting Lin Sun, he was blown away again. Puff! He screamed and coughed up blood, his body twitching. All the people present gasped. This was a half-step king realm. But at this moment, they were in a state of complete defeat, and they couldn't even defend themselves. Who are you? The black-robed middle-aged man was shocked and completely realized the horror of his opponent. Even if he wasn't careless, he still felt that he couldn't fight back. This was undoubtedly incredible. Lin Sun ignored him. He was in no mood to pay attention to the black-robed middle-aged man when he was high and mighty and ignored everything. Kill. He attacked once more. His black hair fluttered while his handsome figure was bathed in dazzling clear divine radiance, and he emanated an imposing aura of supremacy and supremacy. Everyone was stunned. Ko Xing and the others almost thought that they were hallucinating. They couldn't believe it. At this moment, if anyone dared to say that this young master Lin Xia was a spirit celestial master, they would definitely spray him to death with their spit. Humph! I never expected that I would actually encounter a young genius that has stepped foot onto the extreme path towards the Tao. How unexpected! However, do you really think no one can stop you? An indifferent voice suddenly resounded when the black-robed middle-aged man was about to suffer. Along with the voice, numerous half-step king realm figures rushed out from the blood-red ship to kill Lin Sun. Naturally, they could not tolerate their companion being killed right under their noses. At the same time, the group of Sacred Flame sect disciples also attacked, charging towards Miss Lu and the rest on the treasured ship. At this moment, the advantage of numbers was displayed to the fullest. The expressions of Ko Xing and the others changed, and the glimmer of hope that had been born in their hearts was extinguished. Miss Li's heart also sank. They only had Lin Sun on their side. He might be able to fight one side alone, but it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Under such circumstances, could they still count on Lin Sun to turn the tide alone? It was very difficult. It could even be said that there was no hope. The reason was that the other party had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. At this critical juncture, Miss Lu gritted her teeth, and a ruthless look flashed in her clear eyes as if she had made some kind of decision. However, before she could act, a dazzling snow-white saber radiance suddenly appeared in front of her. A broken saber swept across the sky, as if it had pierced through time and space, leaving behind a series of shadows that were invisible to the naked eye. Poof! 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 Some of the Sacred Flame sect disciples, who had rushed over first, were still flying in the void when their bodies were cut in half by the saber radiance. Scarlet blood was like fireworks, exploding above the dangerous and turbulent Boundary River. It was glaring and horrifying. Those Sacred Flame sect disciples were all great reincarnation developing realm cultivators. They belonged to the elite force, but now, they were like paper. In an instant, a saber had broken through the life-and-death situation. Ko Xing and the others dared to swear that they were destined to never forget this scene for the rest of their lives. A saber swept across the sky and cut down the enemies like grass. Even Miss Lu could not help but feel shocked. Originally, she was ready to use the forbidden skill in her eyes and risk her life at the expense of her cultivation. But now it was obviously useless. There was a brief silence, and then angry roars sounded one after another. Bastard! Kill! Kill this evil creature! Damn it! The priests and disciples of the Sacred Flame sect were stimulated to the point of madness, unable to accept all this. They could not imagine that the young man could still control the broken saber to save others when he was besieged by a group of half-step King Realm cultivators. Slash! A half-step King Realm cultivator took out a black sword and slashed down. The sword intent was like fire, and the sword radiance was thousands of feet long, cutting through the void. Die! At the same time, several other half-step King Realm cultivators also attacked from different directions. Buzz! A demonic black giant scissors swept across the sky, and the sharp blades crisscrossed as if they could cut off the yin and yang of the universe. Bang! An enormous hammer that was coiled in lightning descended, and it emanated a myriad of dazzling and resplendent bolts of lightning. Swish! A multicolored whip flashed through the sky, and it emanated circles of multicolored whip images that enveloped down. In an instant, various treasures and secret techniques were like a storm that crisscrossed and intersected in this area, and they revealed boundless phenomena that caused the scene to be extremely terrifying. The surface of the river in an area of 500 kilometers was collapsing and transforming into chaotic flows. Moreover, numerous horrifying rifts appeared in the sky. The heavens and the earth were dim while rumbling like thunder, and it was an expanse of signs of destruction. Such a battle was truly too shocking. Numerous half-step King Realm cultivators had attacked, and if it was in the mortal world, it was sufficient to easily destroy a city and sink an expanse of mountains and rivers. Under such a joint attack, any other cultivator would probably feel despair, be overwhelmed with terror, and be unable to arouse the thought to resist. However, Lin Sun was an exception. The most unexpected thing was that he was still attacking the black-robed middle-aged man at this moment. But unlike before, he'd utilized his full strength. Bang! The snow-white chi soared into the sky, the simple and heavy chi seal suppressed the void, the Bashya prohibition turned into obscure restriction fluctuations, the golden sound waves of Pusho's roar spread out, and the chi seal collided with each other in an instant. Lin Sun exerted the profound meaning of the 9 changes of Calamity Dragon at the same time. As far as the eye could see, one after another, the phantoms of divine beasts appeared around him, shining brightly as if they were alive. It was a shocking scene. This was not the end. In Lin Sun's body, the profound meaning of the Yazi's wrath was running, making his blood and chi boil and his chi furious in his hands. The profound meaning of the 9 strikes for shaking heaven was running in full force, showing the terrible power that could collapse the world and all things. In his sea of consciousness, the spirit of the primordial spirit had a brilliant divine flower above its head. With a solemn appearance, it perfectly manipulated the broken blade and exerted the profound meaning of the 6 strikes of Tianyuan. In front of the treasure ship, it shielded Ko Xing and the others from the wind and rain and killed the enemies. At this moment, Lin Sun seemed to have 3 heads and 6 arms. He exerted all his power at the same time, and his whole body was like a demon that could strike the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Rumble! In an instant, there was an earth-shattering collision in the field. It was as if thunder was surging in the 9th heaven. The blazing light of Tao and divine brilliance swept across, and everything seemed turbulent and chaotic. Even Miss Lu and the others could no longer see the battle in the field clearly. It was too bright and dazzling, making people shudder with fear and unable to look at it closely. This made them worry whether Lin Sun could hold on under such a siege. Swish! The snow-white broken blade flickered, tearing the void and slashing down incomparably sharp saber radiance. The disciples of the sacred fire sect didn't dare to approach. Even the half-step King Realm experts couldn't break through the defense of the broken blade, and were forced to retreat. Seeing this scene, Miss Lu and the others felt a little relieved, but then they fell into shock. How could Lin Sun block the attack of a group of sacred fire sect alone? If this was spread out, it would definitely cause a great sensation. Compared to this, the experts of the sacred fire sect were even more shocked and angry. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that there was such a heaven-defying young man in this world. He alone withstood the siege of a group of half-step King Realm experts, and still had the strength to protect his companions. Who could believe it? Kill! The half-step King Realm experts were furious. Their faces were livid and they were completely determined to kill. If they let Lin Sun live, it would definitely be a great shame for them. They were destined to become a laughing stock and be sneered at by the world. At this moment, Lin soon felt an unprecedented pressure. Towards the end of the battle, he had to use the fighting saint technique to barely block the terrifying attacks from all directions. But at the same time, Lin soon also felt a rare and incomparably carefree feeling. He experienced the soul-stirring feeling that could only be brought about by a life-and-death battle. Battles could make people transform in the shortest time possible. And the source of transformation came from the 4 words soul-stirring. This was a feeling that could only be experienced in a life-and-death battle. In an ordinary spar and competition, knowing that life and death would not be decided, one naturally couldn't have this kind of feeling. Only under this kind of pressure of life and death could one's potential be completely stimulated and exert power far beyond the ordinary. Of course, this was very dangerous. A little carelessness could lead to death. At this moment, Lin Sun's blood was burning and his fighting spirit was boiling, but his state of mind was clear and pure. The mystery of fighting flowed in his heart, which stimulated his potential in the battle and made him braver and braver. Until later, his spiritual vein began to heat up, as if it had awakened from silence. Unconsciously, he had already operated the profound meaning of devouring star way. Chapter 958. Clang. Lin Sun's fist shone and collided head-on with a thunderbolt hammer. Lightning splashed and a deafening roar resounded. At the same time, colorful whips shrouded down and broke the void with amazing momentum, trying to imprison Lin Sun. Lin Sun didn't retreat but advanced instead. He let out a Dao tune, causing golden ripples to spread out and shatter the whip shadows that covered the sky inch by inch, causing them to transform into a rain of light that dispersed into a chaotic flow. He pinched the Swanee seal with his left hand and deduced the meaning of 9 strikes for shaking heaven with his right hand, fighting against the half-step King Realm experts who were rushing from both sides. Rumble! The void was collapsing as if it had been blown up. Lin Sun used different magical Taoism alone to fight against the siege of 4 half-step King Realm experts at the same time. He was extremely powerful and disdainful. The most terrifying thing was that during this process, his spirit of spirit was still controlling the broken blade to stop the opponents on another battlefield. There were also 2 half-step King Realm experts among those opponents. Ko Xing and the others were dumbstruck, and they were shocked speechless. Originally, they'd wanted to help, yet they quickly noticed that they didn't have the chance to interfere at all. Only Miss Lu took out a string of purple bells and deduced the infinite mystery of music. The bells tinkled in the battlefield and helped Lin Sun's broken blade to stop the enemies. Even so, Miss Lu sighed with emotion. She could infer that Lin Sun was extremely powerful and did not belong to any peerless figure in the world. But she didn't expect him to be so strong. Among the younger generation in the entire ancient Desolation realm, there were only a few people who could do this. After all, they were the 6 priests of the Sacred Fire sect, all of whom were half-step King Realm experts. In addition, there were also a group of reincarnation developing realm cultivators attacking together. But Lin Sun, with the cultivation of reincarnation developing realm, turned the tide and fought against the group of enemies. Kill. The people of the Sacred Fire sect were really angry and their eyes were red. They had come here with so many people, but they were stopped by a young man, which was too shameful. At the same time, Lin Sun's combat strength also shocked them. They realized that he was a genius who could not be looked at normally. What was most intolerable was that they hadn't gained any advantage from the beginning of the battle. They couldn't even suppress their opponent. "Young man, who exactly are you?" the elder in the lead shouted loudly. His heart was pounding, and he suspected that the other party was an exceptional inheritor from some terrifying inheritance. The other half-step King realms had livid expressions as well, and they were surprised and bewildered in their hearts. They suspected that if they didn't join forces, they might not be able to go against this youth. As far as they were concerned, Only those peerless and monstrous geniuses that came from ancient sects in the world possessed such heaven-defying combat strength that was capable of surmounting a realm to do battle, and they were extremely abnormal. Lin Sun didn't say a word. His combat power circulated around him, and his figure was like a devil attacking. He had the spirit to swallow the world, and if not me, who else could it be? The battle was very dangerous and the pressure was not ordinary. But it was in such a precarious situation that Lin Sun's potential was completely stimulated. With the help of the battle, Lin Sun's martial arts were honed. He had a kind of extreme release and unprecedented explosive momentum. During the Tao Lantern discussion, he'd already tempered his strength to the absolute peak, and he was capable of suppressing all experts and forcefully crushing Yu Lingkong. Even if it was a collision between absolute paths towards the Tao, he still possessed the might to crush all enemies. But this did not mean that it was perfect. His cultivation hadn't reached the consummation of the reincarnation developing realm. Similarly, no matter it was the supreme Taoist method of Star River by fire or the 6 decapitations of heaven, he hadn't completely grasped its essence. In addition, his control of the Great Way of Fire was only at the level of Tao Aura, and there was still a step away from the realm of Tao Intent. These were not flaws, but potential. Only by thoroughly excavating them and attaining the consummation could it be called the true perfection. Perhaps in the eyes of others, he had already stood at a height that was enough to make anyone marvel in the younger generation, but for Lin Sun it was far from enough. At least, compared with his enemy Yun Chi Bai, it was far from enough. There is no realm in martial arts. In the battle, Lin Sun came to a realization. Cultivation was limited by realms, but there was no realm in martial arts. For example, at this moment, his cultivation stagnated at the middle level of reincarnation developing realm, and he had already set foot on the absolute path towards Tao. But his control and exertion of martial arts could excavate new potential every time. This potential came from the Tao and method he cultivated. Comprehending the profound meaning of the Great Way could make the power of martial arts exert greater strength. Similarly, practicing secret fighting methods could also make the power of martial arts be improved to a whole new level. In short, cultivation was the origin of power, which determined the strength of martial arts. And the secret methods he cultivated and the profound meaning of the Great Way he comprehended could make the power of martial arts exert greater power. For example, Lin Sun's cultivation might still be at the middle level of reincarnation developing realm, but whether it was Star River of Fire or 6 cuts of Tian Yuan, as long as the profound meaning was completely grasped, it was destined to make a significant improvement in his combat power. Similarly, the further comprehension and control of the Great Way of Fire and the Devouring Star Way would also make his combat power rise. This was the connection between the Great Way, secret methods and martial arts. Of course, one's own cultivation was still the foundation that determined the power of martial arts. Comprehending the profound meaning of "there is no realm in martial arts" was just a means to make the combat power more powerful on the basis of cultivation. Lin Sun, who was tempering himself in the battle, suddenly felt a trace of extreme danger in his heart, which made him suddenly sober up. Whoosh! Almost at the same time, the old man leading the Sacred Fire sect suddenly took out a rare treasure flowing with 5-colored divine flames. This was a divine fire shield, which emitted 5-colored divine flames. It was dazzling and quickly expanded in the void, enveloping the entire area. In an instant, the flames poured down from the sky, and infinite Tao patterns appeared and tumbled, possessing the power to burn the sky and destroy the earth. It was terrifying and magical to the extreme. 5-colored divine fire shield. On the treasure ship in the distance, Miss Li's pupils shrank, and a trace of surprise appeared between her brows. Her heart tightened. This treasure was too famous. It had shone brilliantly in ancient times, and its ferocious power shocked the world. No one knew how many exceedingly powerful experts had been killed by it. Rumor had it that the five-colored divine fire shield was refined from the five most famous divine flames in the world: the emu green flame, the gold white flame, the clean water black flame, the extreme earth yellow flame, and the precious sun red flame. It derived the essence of the five elements and was said to be able to smelt the universe and burn the galaxy. There were too many legends about this treasure. It was said that it was personally refined by a king sage in ancient times. When the refinement was successful, the sun and the moon lost their light, the mountains and rivers within 100,000 miles turned into ashes, and all living beings perished. It was as if the end of the world had arrived, and the phenomenon was shocking. In the past, when this treasure appeared, all the sages had to avoid it, and it had killed an unknown number of powerful ancient figures. In short, this was a psychic saint treasure that had long been famous in ancient times, and it had once displayed its ferocious power in that era. But immediately, Miss Lu realized that the treasure taken out by the Sacred Fire sect should only be an imitation. Although its power was terrifying, it didn't have the kind of supreme power that could suppress a world and make the heavens tremble. But even so, this imitation five-colored divine fire shield was amazing enough. It was like a chaotic furnace that could incinerate everything. It was hard to imagine how terrifying it would be when the real five-colored divine fire shield was born. Although Lin Sun didn't recognize this treasure, he sensed the fatal danger at the first moment, and his hair stood on end. "You can die without regrets since you forced me to use this treasure," the old man said indifferently, and his voice was extremely cold. At this moment, he was extremely confident. The other half-step king realms all retreated, unwilling to be involved. They knew the horror of the five-colored divine fire shield, and even they would suffer if they were shrouded in it. Boom! The divine fire shield hung in the sky like a sun, pouring out five different kinds of divine flames, like magnificent heavenly fire pouring down. The scene was extremely beautiful and terrifying. Ridiculous! But Lin Sun was not afraid, and there was an undisguised disdain on his lips. It was ridiculous that 6 half-step king realms could only rely on treasures to suppress him. Lin Sun felt ashamed for them. Ridiculous! This was the first time Lin Sun had said this since the battle began. The undisguised mockery and disdain made the faces of the Sacred Fire sect's powerhouses darken and become ugly. A young man at the reincarnation development realm was not afraid when death was near, and instead mocked them. This made them feel embarrassed. "Young man, even if you have really grown up, the Sacred Fire sect is not something you can offend. No matter how powerful you are still an ant before you become a king. Brother, don't talk nonsense. Use all your strength to refine it." The half-step king realms looked like they were staring at a dead man, and their faces were gloomy. If they didn't kill Lin Sun, they wouldn't be able to wash away the shame in their hearts. In fact, when they spoke, Lin Sun had already been shrouded in the area covered by the five-colored divine fire shield, and he was passively dodging the attacks of the five-colored divine fire. That made Miss Lu, Ko Xing, and the others feel their hearts in their throat. They were extremely nervous. At the same time, they had no time to be distracted, because the enemy opposite them had also taken the opportunity to launch the most intense attack. If it wasn't for Duanren soaring into the sky and blocking the attack with all his might, they would have probably suffered a calamity long ago. The situation at this moment was undoubtedly dangerous to the extreme, and it could be said that their lives were hanging by a thread. "Die." The old man in the lead spoke calmly, and his eyes were filled with coldness. He activated the five-colored divine fire shield, and the five-colored divine fire fell like a waterfall. It was dazzling and resplendent, and it burned the void to the point of collapsing. "Die. Let me see who will die first." At the same time, Lin Sun stretched out his hand and flipped it over. A white jade bottle that was only a few inches tall suddenly flashed out of thin air, and it emanated an obscure and strange brilliance. "The Great Way Bottle!" As early as the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, this bottle had already been filled with the power of the king's four symbols formation. Originally, Lin Sun intended to use it when he killed Mu Jianting and the others, but because of Xia Zhi's sudden appearance, the bottle hadn't revealed its power. But now, Lin Sun couldn't care about anything else. The five-colored divine fire shield was too great a threat to him, and it was sufficient to kill him. He couldn't hold it back any longer. The great Wei bottle glowed, and the accumulated power of the king's formation spread out. Moreover, its power was twice as strong as before. Chapter 959. Although the five-flame shield was a replica, it had been refined by a real saint. Its power was equally terrifying and much stronger than a king's path weapon. If Lin Sun had not shown such incredible combat strength, the leading elder of the Sacred Fire sect would not have used such a treasure on a young man at the reincarnation developing realm. Now, seeing that the five-flame shield was about to show its power and the young man was about to be killed, everyone from the Sacred Fire sect sneered coldly. Just as they had said before, no matter how powerful a peerless talent was, before he became a king, he was still a nonentity that could be killed. But soon, their expressions changed. The young man whom they thought would turn into ashes turned everything around after he took out a strange little bottle. Boom! The terrifying energy of the restriction was like a torrent that covered the heavens and the earth as it poured out from the small bottle, and it instantly suffused the surroundings. Dense and blazing spiritual tattoos flickered, deducing obscure and terrifying power that spread between heaven and earth. Boom! The five-colored divine flame released by the divine fire shield was completely submerged, dispersed, and extinguished before it could even show its power. This made the experts of the Sacred Fire sect stiffen, and they could not believe their eyes. What kind of treasure was this? How could it have such terrifying power? Dong! In the void, the divine fire shield was also affected. It buzzed violently and trembled incessantly, almost submerged by the terrifying fluctuations of the restrictive power. Even Miss Lu was stunned. She had thought that Lin Sun would take out the pagoda that had shown great power at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival. It was rumored in the outside world that the pagoda could restrain the power of the Immortal Hall, so it was destined to be a divine treasure. But she did not expect that the small suet bottle that Lin Sun took out could exert such terrifying power at this time. She even suspected that the attack of a real King's Realm expert was nothing more than this. Oh my God! Child Lin Xia is too powerful! Ko Xing and the others gasped, feeling extremely shocked. Boom! The divine fire shield shook and buzzed violently, as if it could not hold on any longer. Not only that, but the Sacred Flame sect experts who were scattered around were also affected by the restrictive power that spread out like a tidal wave. For a time, the surroundings were in chaos, and shrill cries, exclamations, and furious roars resounded incessantly. Damn it, what kind of restriction is this? How could it be so terrifying? A half-step king was caught off guard and was swept into the flood of restrictions. His body felt as if it was being crushed by a mountain. His bones were broken and he coughed out blood. Beside him, several Sacred Flame sect disciples let out shrill cries and were drowned by the ripples of the restriction. In the blink of an eye, they had already died on the spot. Besides this, the other half-step King Realm cultivators weren't in a good state as well. All of them dodged and resisted in a sorry state, and all of them were furious and astounded. They were unable to accept all of this. All of this had happened too suddenly. No one had expected that even after they had summoned the five-flame divine fire barrier, what awaited them wasn't the death of their opponent, but a reversal of the situation. The most miserable one was the black-robed middle-aged man. He had been seriously injured by Lin Sun and almost died. Now, when he suffered the impact of the fluctuations of the restriction, he was instantly unable to persist any longer. The hair on his entire body was burnt, his skin scorched, and his body seemed as if it was being burned by a furnace. There wasn't a single inch of his body that was unharmed. He had almost exhausted all his strength to barely break free from the shroud of the restriction, and he fled madly into the distance. However, before he had time to escape, he was stopped by Lin Sun, who had already attacked. "You!" The black-robed middle-aged man was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. Then, his entire body was directly smashed by Lin Sun's punch, and a rain of blood splashed high. A half-step King Realm cultivator was killed. When Ko Xing and the others saw this, their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Lin Sun was too strong. He was like a devil that defied the heavens. Even a half-step King Realm cultivator was killed by his strong force. This was unbelievable. "How dare you!" The other half-step King Realm cultivators of the Sacred Flame sect were so angry that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Their faces were livid as they charged towards Lin Sun. Especially the old man who was the leader. He exerted all his strength to activate the 5-flame divine fire barrier, which turned into dazzling divine flames that covered the sky and rapidly suppressed Lin Sun. The reason for this was that even though the energy released by the Great Tao Boundless Bottle had helped Lin Sun get out of his predicament and caught all the enemies off guard, it wasn't Lin Sun's own energy in the end, and it quickly dispersed. This allowed those half-step King Realm cultivators to have a chance to catch their breath and counterattack. However, Lin Sun had already escaped, and he was like a ferocious tiger that had left its cage. He let out a cold grunt as an ice dragon appeared beneath his feet, and he soared into the sky while emitting waves of dragon roars. On the other hand, the Great Tao Boundless Bottle was activated in his palm, and it was like a bottomless black hole that was swallowing the energy of the 5-flame divine fire that descended from Tian. Shit. The old man in the lead was shocked. Never had he imagined that the small bottle would be so miraculous and strange, and it was actually able to swallow and refine the energy of the 5-flame divine fire barrier. This was unimaginable. This was the miraculous effect of the Great Tao Boundless Bottle. Not only could it be used to attack, it could also swallow an opponent's attack and store it within the bottle. It was truly miraculous. Lin Sun seized this opportunity to launch a strong attack. Bang! A Taowu seal soared into the sky while coiled with an all-powerful and unshakable imposing aura, and it rumbled as it crushed through space and smashed through it. Bang! A half-step King Realm expert was immediately slapped flying, and his figure trembled violently while he let out shrill cries. However, his shrill cries stopped abruptly in an instant, because an ice dragon that was jade-white like snow and enormous like a mountain coiled around him before mincing him to death, causing his flesh and blood to trickle down to the ground. Another half-step King Realm expert had been annihilated. He was too formidable. At this moment, Lin Sun was simply like a violent dragon that had left its lair or a fiend god that had escaped, and his combat strength was all-powerful as he crushed his opponent. Everyone was shocked, and they felt a chill run down their spines. "Animal! Die!" The old man in the lead was furious to the point of going mad, and he activated the 5-flame divine fire barrier and brought forth unprecedented might. Swish! Divine flames surged here, and they were white, black, gold, azure. All sorts of divine flames were dazzling like rain as they covered the sky, and it was like a gorgeous and multicolored sea of flames. In ancient times, the ferocious might of the 5-flame divine fire barrier was sufficient to make all sages retreat, and it had annihilated countless earth-shattering figures. Otherwise, how could it have such a world-shocking reputation? Even though the one before them was a replica, its might still couldn't be underestimated, and it was sufficient to make the old freaks of the King Realm afraid to face it head-on. But now, no one had expected that Lin Sun, who held the great way immeasurable bottle, was simply invincible, and he easily swallowed the rain of divine flames that covered the sky. From the beginning to the end, he was completely unharmed as if nothing had happened. This caused everyone to be petrified, and they were unable to imagine that they'd never seen such a miraculous and strange thing. What kind of heaven-defying treasure was that small bottle? At the same time, Lin Sun activated the profundities of the 9 strikes for shaking heaven and the 9 changes of the Calamity Dragon, and its might was terrifying as it killed his opponent. Crack! In just a few breaths, another half-step king realm suffered a calamity, and he was sent flying by Lin Sun's negative bump. His body was still in the air when it suddenly exploded, and a rain of scarlet blood burst out. The experts of the Sacred Fire sect were all chilled, furious, and horrified. They'd realized how powerful Lin Sun was, but they'd never thought that the 5-flame divine fire barrier would actually be ineffective against him. Oh no! The leading old man retreated violently when he sensed that Lin Sun had already charged over. Lin Sun's matchless divine might made him feel a sense of oppression, and he didn't dare to face him head-on. Almost at the same time, the group of Sacred Fire sect disciples and the 2 half-step King Realm experts who were attacking Miss Lu and Ko Xing all sensed that the situation wasn't good. They couldn't care about anything else, and they all rushed over to besiege Lin Sun. Speaking of which, it made them feel aggrieved. From the beginning of the battle, they'd thought that they could easily trample over the treasure ship and kill Miss Lu and the others. They'd never thought that a broken blade would be able to block their attack, and even the 2 half-step King Realm experts couldn't rush over. This made them wonder if Lin Sun would be able to display a stronger combat strength if he focused on fighting without caring about Miss Lu and the others. The answer was yes, because at the same time they rushed over, Lin Sun had no more worries and scruples. With a thought, he recalled the broken blade and attacked forcefully. Star-reaching cut, moon-grabbing cut, burning sun cut. In an instant, the broken blade erupted with terrifying power. The snow-white blade was extremely dazzling, and it displayed the true meaning of the 6 cuts of Sky Yuan. Puffed, puffed, puffed. Those Sacred Fire sect disciples, who were only at the reincarnation development realm, suffered in an instant. Some were beheaded, some were cut in half, and some were instantly cut into pieces by the crisscrossing saber chi. Even the remaining 3 half-step King Realm experts were terrified and almost went crazy. They couldn't imagine how the situation could develop to such an extent. A young man at the reincarnation development realm had actually defeated them? Even if this spread to the outside world, who would dare to believe it? This was too unbelievable, as unreal as a nightmare. At this moment, Lin Sun's strength was vividly demonstrated. Even a famous killing weapon, like the 5-flame divine fire barrier, couldn't stop him. Go! A half-step King Realm expert wanted to escape because he knew that the situation was extremely precarious and unfavorable. If he continued to fight, the loss would be more serious, and it was very likely that he would be wiped out. Unfortunately, it was still a step too late. Lin Sun broke out. Like a flash of lightning, he exerted the power of the broken blade to the extreme and slashed out. Silence cut. With a puff, the broken blade fell, cutting through the defensive power of the half-step King Realm expert, smashing a bronze shield he had taken out, and then his head was cut off. Blood gushed out. Lin Sun rushed over and continued to kill the leading old man without looking at him. Boom! The 5-flame divine fire barrier glowed, bursting out a rain of fire and rushing to Lin Sun fiercely. It seemed that he wanted to destroy both jade and stone. Lin Sun didn't avoid it. He kept running the infinite way bottle, and the mouth of the bottle spurted out brilliant and obscure light, constantly swallowing and refining. Swish! The broken blade swept over. The old man was so frightened that he turned around and fled. His fighting spirit completely collapsed, and he didn't dare to hesitate any more. However, the broken blade moved through the void like a ghost and continued to chase him. Although the old man tried his best to defuse it, the broken blade still scratched his shoulder, and most of his arm was cut off. It was too fast. All this happened in the blink of an eye. Chapter 960. Ko Xing and the rest were completely stunned. They had never thought that the young man recommended by the old man, by Feng Lu, would be a hidden peerless demon. Before the battle had even begun, They had already felt hopeless because their opponents were too powerful. There were 6 half-step monarchs and a group of reincarnation developing realm cultivators, who would not feel hopeless in the face of such a lineup. Although they were adventurers who had been in and out of the border river all year round and were ruthless people who had lived their lives on the edge of a knife, they knew very well that they were nothing in the face of such power. However, what happened next made them doubt their eyes again and again. They were shocked again and again until they lost their composure. Child Lin Xia alone had resisted the suppression of a group of powerful cultivators from the Sacred Flame sect. He was simply like an unparalleled demon who had turned the tide. The most terrifying thing was that up until this point in the battle, 3 half-step monarchs had been killed by him. More than half of the Sacred Flame sect disciples had been slaughtered before they could even struggle, their blood splattering all over the place. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, no one would have believed it. At this moment, in the eyes of Ko Xing and the rest, Lin Sun was like an unparalleled demon who had a peerless demeanor that could suppress all enemies. Miss Lu could not remain calm as she thought of many things. She thought of the Bai Fong clan born in the Saint Hermit land. She thought of a young man who had been born from the Khanate metal source in the sect when she was young. At that time, even the elders of the sect had to be courteous to this young man. She thought of chaotic thoughts flashed through her mind. All the peerless demons who had left a deep impression on Miss Lu appeared at this moment and compared them with Lin Sun before her. In the end, she came to a conclusion that stunned even herself. From the beginning to the end, she could not find anyone who could easily suppress Lin Sun. This guy. Could he already be on par with the monsters in the Saint Hermit land? Miss Li's thoughts wandered and she was in a trance. The battle was still ongoing in the field. However, at this moment it was already one-sided. Lin Sun operated his body technique, and the broken blade flew in the void, trying his best to kill his opponent. There were only 3 half-step monarchs left on the side of the Sacred Flame sect. However, at this moment, they'd been killed to the point of being terrified, and their will to fight had almost collapsed. They were on the verge of despair. They couldn't believe it no matter how they racked their brains. How could they be defeated by a young man when they had the absolute advantage? Moreover, they had been defeated in such a terrible way. The other disciples of the Sacred Flame sect were in an even worse state. Their legs were trembling and they were scared out of their wits. They fled in panic like dogs that had lost their homes. Compared to their previous cold and austere appearance, they were like 2 different people. Bang! Suddenly, a deafening sound of collision resounded. The crimson flame cauldron before a half-step king realm expert was slashed into pieces by a broken blade, and it exploded with a bang. It affected the half-step king realm expert, causing his beard and hair to be set ablaze. But in the end, he'd still managed to escape with his life. This caused him to be astounded, and he couldn't help but rejoice that he'd escaped from death. But before he could rejoice, a resplendent fist energy had already pierced through the void. Boom! His pupils suddenly dilated. In his field of vision, the fist seemed to have become infinitely larger, and it was filled with a terrifying glow of the Tao that caused the heavens and the earth to tremble. It seemed as if it could crush the world and throw the world into chaos. Was this still a strength that a reincarnation developing realm expert could possess? This young man, who exactly was he? This was the last thought of this half-step king realm expert before he died. After that, his entire body was annihilated within the blazing fist energy. His body exploded like glass, and his flesh and blood spread out with a bang. Another half-step king realm expert had been killed. At this moment, Lin Sun's black hair fluttered in the wind. His handsome face was indifferent as before, and his clothes couldn't avoid being stained with blood. It was the blood of his enemies. It was dark red and dazzling, and it hadn't dried up yet. It caused his entire body to emit a frightening might, and he was like a bloodthirsty demon. You, damn it! The eyes of the old man in the lead and the other half-step king realm expert almost popped out of their sockets, and blood flowed from the corners of their eyes. They were so angry that they were about to go mad, and they were so shocked that their bodies went cold. Since they'd started cultivating, they'd never been in such a sorry state. Especially when their opponent was merely one person. A young man who was merely at the middle stage of the reincarnation developing realm. "It's your turn." Lin Sun stepped forward. The snow-white Chi-Ho appeared beneath his feet and opened up a path for him. Since the fight had already begun, he didn't intend to spare any of them. At the beginning of the battle, he wanted to use the battle to temper himself and stimulate his potential in martial arts. That was why he hadn't been ruthless. It could even be said that if his opponent hadn't released the 5-flame shield so early, the battle might not have ended so quickly. In other words, Lin Sun was just using them as a whetstone. For him now, a half-step King Realm expert might be very powerful, but as long as he wasn't an extremely abnormal existence, he really couldn't deter Lin Sun. One should know that as early as when he was at the Tao Insight Realm, he had killed a half-step King Realm expert of the Black Sea Tengu clan. "It's over," the old man in the lead turned pale. He tried his best to escape, but he was locked on from beginning to end, and he couldn't get rid of it. This made him completely realize that it was very likely that he would die here today. A young man at the reincarnation developing realm. How could he be so strong? The old man was so depressed and helpless that he was about to collapse. Buzz. However, at this moment, an astonishing willpower came from the 5-flame shield he controlled all of a sudden. It was as vast as the sea and penetrated the universe. "It's the willpower imprint of the sage in this treasure." Miss Li's expression changed slightly. "This damn thing again." Lin Sun's face also darkened. He operated the Great Way immeasurable bottle to the extreme, and obscure and brilliant light gushed out. After killing Yu Linkong, the willpower in the Longevity Hall had been awakened, which gave Lin Sun an unimaginably serious blow. But now, a trace of willpower belonging to the sage had also awakened in the 5-flame shield, which made Lin Sun feel extremely afraid. Unexpectedly, the 5-flame shield didn't choose to kill. Instead, it evolved into a rain of light that filled the sky, turned around, and fled with the powerhouses of the sacred fire sect. The old man in the lead was overjoyed. This was definitely a chance of survival. Lin Sun's face was gloomy. How could he let this happen? He controlled the broken sword to attack. "Ignorant ant." A grand voice came from the 5-flame shield. It was indifferent and cold, like the ruler of the 9 heavens, shocking people. Boom. In an instant, the shield was as bright as the sun. It was unprecedentedly blazing and terrifying. It spun gently in the void, splashing out a rain of divine flames. Green wood flame, gold white flame, pure water black flame, earth extreme yellow flame, sun red flame. They were dense like a storm, covering the sky and earth. The power was too terrifying. It was much stronger than when it was used by the old man. Miss Lu and the rest stiffened. No one expected that such a change would happen when Lin Sun was about to win the battle. That was the willpower of the sage. It was absolutely terrifying. Even the old monsters of the King Realm wouldn't dare to face it head-on. But what was unbelievable was that Lin Sun didn't retreat in such a dangerous situation. Instead, he charged forward. This, Miss Lu and the rest were stunned. In their vision, Lin Sun's figure was instantly drowned by the endless divine flame rain, and they could no longer see him. But soon, they noticed that the boundless divine flame rain was disappearing at an amazing speed, as if it was swallowed silently by a big abyss. After that, Lin Sun's figure appeared from within the divine flames. He seemed ethereal, tall, and mighty. In his palm was a jade bottle that was only a few inches long, and it emanated an obscure and strange glow of the Tao. It was devouring the 5-colored divine flames that were pouring down from all directions. Clang! At the same time, the broken blade cut the divine fire shield fiercely, unafraid of the terrible divine flame. The sky and earth trembled, and the divine fire shield buzzed violently. It staggered in the void and was almost shot down. "Junior, I'll kill you another day," the five-flame shield shouted angrily. Then, it actually abandoned the powerful cultivators of the sacred fire sect. With a sudden flash, it tore through the void and disappeared. Obviously, the sage's will imprint was worried that the five-flame shield would fall into Lin Sun's hands, so it fled directly, ignoring the strong practitioners of the sacred fire sect. Because it was too fast, Lin Sun was a beat too slow to stop it. Hierarch. The old men of the sacred fire sect were completely dumbfounded. They had thought that they had escaped from a desperate situation. Who would have thought that they would be driven into a desperate situation again? Hierarch? Lin Sun realized that the wisp of the sage's will hidden in the five-flame shield was from the hierarch of the sacred fire sect. He didn't think any more and looked at the abandoned strong practitioners of the sacred fire sect with his cold black eyes. You. The leading old man was so shocked that he couldn't speak. His mind was in a mess. Even a wisp of the willpower from the hierarch couldn't do anything to such a young man, which made him feel terrible. Lin Sun didn't talk nonsense. He spread the Basha prohibition in this area and then began to kill. Puff, puff, puff. There was no suspense at all. Under the pressure of Lin Sun's terrible strength and the broken blade, the strong practitioners of the sacred fire sect were killed on the spot one after another, no matter how hard they struggled. Young man, no matter who you are, you will suffer from the bloody revenge of our sect in the future for what you have done today. Your family, friends, sect will all suffer because of you. The leading old man cursed with hatred and madness. Just you wait. Before he could finish his words, the broken blade swept across and cut off his head. The headless body fell with a loud crash and was submerged in the tumbling boundary river. This area was deathly silent. Ko Xing and the others stared blankly, all of them stunned. The scenes they saw just now were too shocking. A group of strong practitioners of the sacred fire sect from Aolai country had been killed by Lin Sun without even frowning. He was too strong. Miss Lu couldn't calm down and her emotions were turbulent. She knew very well how powerful the sacred fire sect was, but she didn't expect that even the five-flame shield, which had shocked the ancient times, couldn't do anything to Lin Sun. Was this the demeanor of Demon Lin? P.S. Let's warm up. There will be 5 updates on Saturday. Chapter 961. Miss Lu knew that Lin Sun already possessed an invincible momentum. He was invincible among his peers and could even kill his enemies across realms. In today's world, only those monstrous existences who had also set foot on the peak of the world could fight against him. Miss Lu was born in the Saint Hermit grounds. She was intelligent and knowledgeable, but when she roughly judged Lin Sun's current power, she couldn't help but feel pressured. If he entered the East Victory boundary, who would be able to stand against him? This was destined to be unsolvable. According to the world's conventional methods, Lin Sun's combat power could no longer be measured. He would definitely have a place in the Great World War. What was laughable was that the orthodoxies in Shihing boundary wanted to kill such a peerless talent. They were simply muddle-headed. When Miss Lu thought of the rejection and blows Lin Sun had suffered in Shihing boundary, she felt ridiculous. However, she also understood that the rise of a heavenly talent was bound to attract endless blows and hostility. Moreover, Lin Sun came from the mortal world alone. He was bound to face more hostility and suppression. This was inevitable. Even if he entered Dongxing boundary, Lin Sun was bound to face a lot of suppression if he wanted to continue to rise without a powerful sect to rely on. "Let's get out of here," Lin Sun returned. Although he had obtained a great victory, his expression was more solemn than before. A cold light flashed in Miss Li's clear eyes. She immediately ordered, "Set off at full speed." Although Ko Xing and the rest were puzzled, they didn't dare to be negligent. They hurriedly steered the treasure ship away. "What's wrong?" Miss Lu asked. "Someone is spying on us in the dark." The commotion caused by the battle just now was too great. I'm afraid it has already attracted the attention of some terrifying existences in the Boundary River. Lin Sun's expression was solemn. Previously, he had wanted to clean up the battlefield and plunder some benefits from the sacred fire sex expert. However, his heart palpitated strongly and he felt uneasy. The intuition honed by years of battle made him decisively make the decision to retreat. This was the Boundary River. Since ancient times, there had been many frightening legends about it. It was dangerous and was regarded as a forbidden area. Even the old monsters of the King realm didn't dare to enter it easily. Although the Boundary River was undergoing shocking changes and wasn't as frightening as before, it had begun to attract many experts to adventure and explore. It was still too dangerous. Miss Lu realized the severity of the situation and couldn't help but ask, "How do you feel now?" "Not bad," Lin Sun said casually. In reality, this battle had exhausted him greatly. This was especially true when he had used the immeasurable Great Tao bottle to resist the divine fire barrier. He had almost been unable to endure it. Although this treasure was extremely miraculous, it required a large amount of spiritual energy to support it when it was absorbing and accumulating energy. Fortunately, the Great Tao immeasurable bottle was filled with energy once more, and it was the might of the five-flame barrier. Even if it encountered an enemy right now, it only had to be released, and it would be sufficient to create unimaginably terrifying lethality. As soon as Lin Sun and the others left, a golden treasure ship came. "Luo Jia, you should tell me who that fellow is now, right?" On the treasured ship, Shun Baishuan's eyes were like lightning as he swept his gaze across the battlefield. Earlier, they were hiding in the darkness, witnessing a world-shaking great battle. Even Shun Baishuan was shocked, unable to calm down. He really didn't expect to encounter such a heaven-defying peer in the Boundary River, who killed half-step monarchs as easily as chopping melons and vegetables. It was extremely abnormal. In particular, he was very interested in the broken blade and the Great Tao immeasurable bottle in Lin Sun's hands. He realized how miraculous and powerful they were. Luo Jia was silent as she carefully recalled the scenes she had just seen. Finally, she came to a conclusion. Compared to the time at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival, this youth, who was regarded as a demon god, had become even stronger. Could he be that demon god Lin? Shun Baishuan was suspicious. Besides him, who else would have such heaven-defying combat strength? Luo Jia regained her composure. Her sleeves fluttered in the wind, her starry eyes were tranquil, and her expression was as calm as still water. "It's really him?" Shun Baishuan was stunned. Didn't they say that his greatest reliance was a mysterious pagoda made of divine creation metal? Luo Jia sighed softly. He didn't even use that pagoda, yet he resisted the willpower of a saint. That's what makes him even more terrifying, isn't it? Shun Baishuan came back to his senses after a while, and then he said with a smile, "I've finally seen the strength of this demon god Lin. He's not bad, and his reputation is not undeserved. Well, I just don't know if he's willing to lend the treasure in his hand to me to play with." Speaking of this, his eyes surged with a terrifying divine light, and his whole body exuded an invisible power. He was like a descendant of an emperor, arrogant and arrogant. Luo Jia's beautiful eyebrows furrowed suddenly, and she said, "You've already seen how terrifying he is. Do you still intend to provoke him?" "Provoke?" Shun Baishuan smiled, revealing a mouthful of snow-white and neat teeth. "No, I've met my match. I'm itching to fight with him. Of course, it would be even better if I could borrow the treasure in his hand to play with." Speaking of this, he seemed to be a little impatient. He drove the treasure ship and swept in the direction where Lin Sun disappeared. "There's no time like the present. Let's go and have some fun now." Luo Jia felt a headache coming on. In terms of the ability to cause trouble, Shun Baishuan was definitely a good helper, and once he made a decision, no one could persuade him. Among the younger generation of the Saint families, this direct descendant of the Shun family had the title of Devil Incarnate. He was arrogant and lawless. If it weren't for the good relationship between Shun Baishuan's family and hers, she would never have asked this guy to help her. Have you forgotten the purpose of our trip? Luo Jia intended to dissuade him again. How could I dare to forget? After fighting with that guy, I'll help you subdue the remnant soul of the dark blood phoenix. Shun Baixin said with a smile, in high spirits. He has a holy treasure in his hand. Humph, this time I also brought a great killing weapon handed down by my ancestors. This time I'll have to rely on this treasure to subdue the remnant soul of the dark blood phoenix. Aren't you afraid of being beaten up? Ha ha ha, Luo Jia, although Demon Lin is powerful, do you think I'll be afraid of him? Shun Baishuan's face was full of confidence. At this point, Luo Jia immediately extinguished the idea of dissuading this guy. In his heart, he only hoped that Lin Sun could beat this guy up and kill his prestige. In the room, Lin Sun was meditating to restore his strength. Beside him, Xia Ji sat upright in front of the table, enjoying the food Lin Sun prepared for her seriously. Her white face, which was beautiful enough to make the world dim, was as tranquil as before. Killing the enemy is killing the enemy. Why do you need to practice martial arts? If you had been more focused, you would have ended the battle long ago, Xia Ji commented while eating, her voice as clear as spring water echoing in the room. Being despised by a little girl like Xia Ji, Lin Sun felt a little embarrassed. He defended himself. Killing the enemy is secondary. What I lack most now is to improve my combat strength. That's the most important thing. There are many ways to improve one's combat strength. It doesn't have to be like this. Xia Ji picked up a piece of fat and oily meat and stuffed it into her mouth. She said vaguely while chewing, "Let's not talk about this. I may undergo the fourth quietus recultivation in a while. Before that, I hope you can promise me one thing." Lin Sun was stunned. So soon? Xia Ji nodded and continued to eat. "What is it? If I can do it, I'll promise you everything." Lin Sun took a deep breath and answered happily. This was the first time that Xia Ji had made a request. How could he refuse her? It's very simple. Speaking of this, Xia Ji put down her bowl and chopsticks, raised her beautiful face, and stared at Lin Sun with a pair of star-like eyes. She said seriously, "When I recultivate, you're not allowed to flirt with other women, not even if they throw themselves at you." Lin Sun was speechless. The corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching fiercely, and his forehead was full of black lines. He didn't expect that Xia Ji would make such an excessive request. He said angrily, "I've never done this before. You don't respect my feelings, do you?" Xia Ji said naturally, "I'm taking precautions. You haven't done it before, but it doesn't mean you won't do it in the future." Unlike before, the current Xia Ji had grown into a shockingly beautiful girl. She was elegant and ethereal, her eyebrows were like the crescent moon in the sky, and her delicate body was slender and graceful. She was no longer a little girl like before. In the face of such a request, no one could be cruel enough to refuse. But Lin Sun felt very depressed. He was going to be 18 years old soon, but he had never experienced the love between a man and a woman. Now he was forbidden to do so. Did she want him to be lonely for the rest of his life? This request was too intolerable. No. Lin Sun flatly refused such an unreasonable request. He couldn't bear it. Once he did, he wouldn't be able to live a good life in the future. Xia Ji's approach was very simple. She stood up and said, "Then I'll be very angry when I wake up next time." Lin Sun was stunned. "Are you serious?" Summer Solstice nodded lightly. Lin Sun stood up suddenly and said angrily, "Are you planning to rebel? Don't you have a conscience?" Xia Ji raised her delicate eyebrows, thought for a while and said, "Well, I'll make a concession. If you can defeat me, I can accept your objection. But if you can't defeat me, you have to accept it." Lin Sun said without hesitation, "Deal." He didn't believe it. Lin Sun, in this world, you are the only one I make concessions to, Xia Ji said seriously. Facing Xia Ji's clear and clean eyes and the serious expression on the girl's fair and beautiful face, Lin Sun's heart inexplicably trembled. At this time, a chaotic and restless sound came from outside the room, which surprised Lin Sun. What happened again? Chapter 962. In front of the treasure ship, the turbid river surged into the sky, rolling up snow-like waves. Shun Baixian stood proudly in the void with his long hair and clothes fluttering in the wind. With a lonely smile, he said indifferently, "Go, call Demon Lin out. I want to fight with him." On the treasure ship, Ko Xing and the others were all stunned. They had just defeated a group of Sacred Fire sect cultivators, and now such an extremely arrogant young man had come out. It really surprised them. However, unlike last time, they already knew the identity of Child Lin Xia. He was not a spiritual celestial master at all, but Demon Lin, who had long been famous in the West Hung world. As native cultivators of the West Hung world, they knew how famous Demon Lin was. He was an absolutely tyrannical figure who made many strong cultivators of the West Hung world pale at the mention of his name. Moreover, they had just witnessed how Lin Sun had killed a group of Sacred Fire sect cultivators. Under such circumstances, when they saw Shun Baixian jump out and threaten to challenge Lin Sun, their expressions all became strange. Was he an idiot? No, he looked like a decent person, but why did he seem so reckless? They had doubts in their hearts, and they couldn't help but look at him with a touch of pity, as if they were looking at a simple-minded fool. Shun Baixian was startled, keenly aware that the atmosphere was a little strange. What were those guys looking at? It was too disgusting. He shouted, "What are you waiting for? Go. If you annoy me, be careful." However, when Ko Xing and the others heard this, instead of being shocked, their expressions became more and more pitiful. Where did this fool come from? He knew that Lin Sun was here, but he still boasted shamelessly. He was really tired of living. Don't tell me he's here to gain fame? After all, even if he was defeated by Lin Sun now, it would be an extremely glorious thing, the green-faced assassin asked with a frown. That should be the case. People like him are the most detestable. For the sake of fame, they don't even care about their integrity. The culture of the cultivation world is ruined by people like him. Qi Lian did not hide his disdain. The moral degeneration of the world is getting worse and worse. This guy has gone crazy from wanting to be famous, Ko Xing said seriously. Shun Baixian's eyes widened, and he almost couldn't believe his ears. These fellows actually dare to criticize me like this? He was angered to the point he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Since he'd started cultivating until now, he'd been taken to be the devil incarnate. Everyone feared him, and no one dared to slander him. But now, he was seen as a clown who had no integrity and wanted to become famous. Were these guys tired of living? Shun Baixian's face darkened. In the distance, Loka, who saw this scene, couldn't help showing a strange expression. He tried hard not to laugh out loud. He didn't expect that Shun Baixian would be criticized before he saw Lin Sun. His heart must be going crazy, right? Luo Jia knew very well that although Shun Baixian was domineering and arrogant, he was extremely disdainful of making things difficult for those he didn't care about. He wasn't worried that Shun Baixian would go berserk and hurt others. "Shut up!" Shun Baixian roared, and a terrifying aura surged from his body. Strands of golden divine light emerged, causing his entire body to shine like a god. Ko Xing and the others stiffened, but they weren't afraid. They were quite surprised. It seemed that this simpleton had some tricks up his sleeves, which was why he dared to come to the Boundary River to challenge Lin Sun. "Friend, I advise you to leave quickly. There are many ways to make yourself famous in this world. You don't have to resort to such a way to humiliate yourself," Ko Xing advised. You said that I'm humiliating myself?" Shun Baixian pointed at himself, as if he couldn't believe it. He was so angry that his whole body glowed with golden light, and he was so impulsive that he wanted to kill someone. Although the words are a bit harsh, good medicine tastes bitter. I'm doing this for your own good. Listen to me, you're still young. Don't lose the bottom line and integrity of a strong man just to become famous. Although you can become famous in this way, you'll be ridiculed by others. Ko Xing subconsciously thought that the reason why Shun Baixian was so angry was because he had seen through his thoughts. This made him sigh in his heart. Young people nowadays were becoming more and more exaggerated and irritable. They couldn't keep their cool at all. Friend, hurry up and leave. If Lin Sun is alarmed, the consequences will be serious. You're still young. Don't do stupid things. One slip can cause eternal regret. Don't lose control at this time. Green-faced assassin and Qilian also advised sincerely. Slip, slip. Shun Baishuan's head was in a daze, and his face was green. He was so angry that his hands and feet were trembling, and his whole body exuded a terrifying killing intent. Being slandered like this, he really wanted to kill. It was too infuriating. How could they treat him as a young man who was about to lose control? If this got out, he would be laughed at to death. Loka immediately stopped watching the scene. Her clear eyes narrowed, realizing that Shun Baixian was about to go berserk. Once this guy went crazy, he was destined to see blood. Miss Lu, who had been watching coldly, also felt a chill in her heart. She became alert and vigilant. When Lin Sun walked out of the room, he saw this scene. He was a bit surprised to see Loka, and then he looked at Shun Baixian. He could not help but find it funny that Shun Baixian was so aggrieved that he was about to spit out blood. Clearly, Ko Xing and the others thought that Shun Baixian was no match for them. That was why Ko Xing tried to persuade him with kind words. Who would have thought that Shun Baixian would lose his temper? To be honest, the strength of Shun Baishuan's energy surprised even Ko Xing. Shun Baishuan's energy was not inferior to Yu Lingkong's. There was no doubt that Shun Baixian was another peerless figure who came out of nowhere. Judging by his attitude, he was clearly an extremely arrogant and conceited guy. Swish! In an instant, Shun Baishuan's eyes were fixed on Lin Sun like a bolt of lightning. His eyes were as sharp as a knife. With a gloomy face, Shun Baixian gnashed his teeth and said, "You are that demon Lin? You showed up just in time. If you were any later, I'm afraid your companions would have suffered." Lin Sun frowned. "So, you are here to make trouble?" As he spoke, he threw a glance at Loka. This successor of the Sword Saint from the Miluo Palace of the Earth Imperial Universe had left a deep impression on Lin Sun. But at the moment, Lin Sun could not figure out why Loka was here. "Nice to meet you, young master." From the distance, Loka transmitted a message. There was a trace of helplessness in her voice as she told Lin Sun the whole story. Only then did Lin Sun understand. It turned out that this guy called Shun Baixian had his eyes on Lin Sun's treasure and had come to rob him. "Young master, this guy is not a bad person. If he has offended you in any way, please forgive him." Loka sighed. She could not help but feel upset that she had to explain in this way to Lin Sun. Lin Sun only smiled and made no comment. Shun Baixian had his eyes on his treasure and came to rob him. If a fight were to break out, Lin Sun would not show any mercy. "Demon God Lin, I am here for a simple reason. I heard that you are quite capable and I am itching to fight with you. If I win, you can lend me your holy artifact. If I lose, you can do whatever you want to me. What do you think?" At this moment, Shun Baixian was impatient. He stated his purpose directly because he could not control his anger any longer. He was slandered and reprimanded. He had almost become a delinquent. How could he tolerate such humiliation? He needed to vent. And Lin Sun was, without a doubt, a good target. "What if I don't agree?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and asked. This guy was crazy. Even at his doorstep, he could be so arrogant and self-confident. "You have to agree even if you don't want to. It's not up to you." Shun Baixin said unhappily. Even if you are afraid, you have to fight first. Ko Xing and the others were all stunned. This fool was really simple-minded. There was no one else who could be as stubborn as him. If Shun Baixin knew what they were thinking, he would definitely go mad with anger. To be honest, he had never been slandered like this since he started cultivating. Since when did the descendants of the Shun clan become so excessive? Miss Lu suddenly spoke with a hint of coldness in her voice. Don't bring up my background. To me, the reputation of my clan is just a burden. I don't care about it. Shun Baixin shouted. He was incomparably arrogant. It was unknown whether his ancestors would be so angry that even their coffins would collapse if they heard this. Even Miss Lu was stunned. The powerhouses of the Shun clan were definitely not like this. Calling him a scoundrel was already a compliment. Luo Jia smiled bitterly. Only she knew that Shun Baixin was right. He was indeed a lawless and unscrupulous demon king in human form. Even his clansmen had headaches because of him. Over the years, they had wiped his ass for him countless times. Lin Sun, are you going to fight or not? Aren't you called the demon god? Show me the backbone of the demon god and fight. Shun Baixuan's cold eyes flashed with electricity. Since you want to fight, you should at least wait until Lin Sun recovers. You won't win fair and square, Miss Lu said coldly, seeming to have seen through this guy's temper. Shun Baixin was stunned. After a while, he said angrily, Fine, then I'll wait. Is 1 hour enough? As soon as these words came out, everyone's impression of him changed a lot. At least this guy was arrogant, but he had a strong character and disdained to bully others. To everyone's surprise, at this time, a cold and chilling voice suddenly resounded in the field. Don't bother. I'll play with you. Along with the voice, Xia Ji appeared in the field in a large black cloak, her body exuding a quiet dark fluctuation. Lin Sun cursed inwardly. This girl was very unhappy when her conversation with him was interrupted just now. Now, she was obviously extremely displeased with Shun Baixin and even took the initiative to stand up. At the same time, Luo Jia's clear eyes shrank and her heart trembled. It was her. In an instant, she recalled the bloody scene that occurred on the Dao platform during the Dao discussion lantern platform. At that time, this young woman was simply like a god that came from the darkness, and she killed with a single strike. She annihilated peerless figures like Mu Jianting and Li Qinghuan as if she was slaughtering chickens, and it caused her to feel extremely fearful. It could be said that although the other party was just a delicate girl, she was definitely a more dangerous and terrifying character than the demon god Lin. Chapter 963. However, Shun Baixin didn't recognize Xia Ji. When he saw a delicate girl stand out, he frowned and waved his hand. This is a man's business. Don't meddle in it. Get out of the way. Then, he looked at Lin Sun unhappily. Don't you feel ashamed to call yourself devil god? Let a little girl stand out? Lin Sun's expression was a little strange. Loka couldn't stand it anymore and wanted to remind Lin Sun. But at this moment, Xia Ji had already moved. Her delicate figure strode forward like a stream of light in the darkness, and she suddenly left. You said it's shameful to fight with me? Xia Ji's cold voice carried a biting chill. She had already arrived in front of Shun Baixin at an incredible speed. I'm a man. How can I bully a little girl like you? Hurry up, Shun Baixin looked very impatient. But before he could finish his words, his pupils suddenly shrank. He suddenly let out a strange cry and retreated. Clang! A purple spear with an ancient luster had stabbed at him. If he hadn't dodged in time, his chest would have been pierced. You! Shun Baixin was furious. Only then did he realize that something was wrong. A man only knows how to retreat? Xia Ji stepped forward. From beginning to end, she was as cold as the darkness, with a kind of heart-palpitating aura. Whoosh! The purple spear swept out. It was a simple move, but it made Shun Baixuan's face change again. He felt a terrible oppression coming at him. He couldn't help but let out a strange cry and had to dodge. His face suddenly turned livid. He had been forced to retreat twice in a row, which made him lose face. He shouted, "Don't force me to be ruthless! So what if I force you?" Xia Ji stepped forward and the purple spear appeared. She struck out neatly. She seemed calm, but there was a kind of threatening momentum. "Do you really think I don't dare to deal with you?" Shun Baixian was furious. He took out a golden spear and confronted it head-on. Bang! The two collided and the divine light roared. It was deafening. Shun Baixian staggered and almost flew out. All of a sudden, his pupils dilated. He could hardly believe his eyes. How could this girl have such terrible power? Before he could react, Xia Ji had already charged at him again. The purple spear was like lightning, and her black robe fluttered in the wind, making the young lady look like a deity that walked out of the darkness. There was a kind of quiet and cold might about her. As expected, Shun Baixian was sent flying. He let out a strange cry, looking both angry and surprised. He was so sullen that he almost coughed up blood. How was this possible? Shun Baixian had always been very confident and arrogant. He believed that among the younger generation, only a handful of heaven-defying geniuses from the Saint Hermit land could barely catch his eye. Apart from them, the other powerhouses were unbearable. In reality, he did indeed have the qualifications to be arrogant. Not only was his natural talent extraordinary, even his bloodline and resources were peerlessly formidable, and he was taken to be a rare genius of the Shun clan that only appeared once every 10,000 years. But now, a young woman was suppressing him to the point he couldn't even raise his head, and she sent him flying over and over again. This caused him to start to doubt his life. In the distance, Ko Xing and others were full of pity. This stupid fool was really pitiful. He couldn't even beat a girl. How could he provoke Child Lin? Wasn't he asking to be humiliated? If Shun Baixian knew what they were thinking, he would surely burst into tears. He was a dignified, peerless genius of the Shun clan. Not only was he taken to be a youth who had lost his footing, but he was also taken to be asking to be humiliated. This was too infuriating. Miss Lu stared blankly. She had long since realized that Shun Baixian was absolutely an extremely tyrannical figure. Otherwise, she wouldn't have mocked him earlier and said that he had an unfair advantage in challenging Lin Sun. However, she still hadn't expected that the situation would take such a turn. The sudden appearance of a young woman had actually forced Shun Baixian to retreat in a sorry state, and he was just short of covering his head and fleeing like a rat. Of course, she didn't think that Shun Baixian didn't live up to his reputation. All of this only showed that the young woman was stronger than Shun Baixian. Could she be the young woman who helped Lin Sun kill a group of peerless geniuses at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival? Suddenly, Miss Lu came to a realization, and her heart shook. This matter had caused an uproar in Shiheng world. Many people were speculating about the young woman's origins and identity, but it had always been a mystery that no one knew the answer to. But now, seeing her suppress Shun Baixian with her own eyes, Miss Lu realized that the rumors were indeed not exaggerated. This young woman was indeed too powerful. Lorga sighed in her heart. She had originally wanted to remind Shun Baixian, but now she suddenly felt that it was not a bad idea to teach this guy a lesson. The only thing that worried her was that if Shun Baixian was killed, the consequences would be severe. It was also at this moment that Lin Sun's voice sounded in her ears. "Miss Lorga, don't worry. I've already instructed him not to kill him." Lorga looked up and saw Lin Sun looking at her with a smile, as if he had seen through her thoughts. This made her feel inexplicably depressed. If it weren't for Shun Baixian, how could she have been treated like this by Lin Sun? She had been forced into a passive position, and she had no choice but to accept his kindness. In the distance, Shun Baixian was screaming like a ghost, his voice full of anger, astonishment, grievance, embarrassment, and other emotions. He was like a virgin who had been ravaged. At that moment, He was truly inconsolable from embarrassment. He had arrived with a ferocious aura, but before he could even fight Fiend God Lin, the main character, he had been beaten up by a young girl. If news of this were to spread, his reputation would be completely ruined. Xia Ji didn't care about this. If it weren't for Lin Sun's warning, according to her character, she would have directly killed this guy who had ruined her conversation with Lin Sun. But the purple spear swept through the air and fiercely struck Shun Baishuan's back, sending him flying. He let out a scream, and his handsome face was distorted. However, he was also extremely amazing. His whole body was shining with a golden brilliance, and the Taoist arts and treasures he used could be said to be world-shocking. Even though he was suppressed, he didn't suffer any real damage. Even so, it still made Shun Baixin feel extremely humiliated. He was a devil incarnate who made people pale at the mention of his name, but now he was being ravaged by a young woman. If this were to be known, he would definitely become the laughing stock of the world. Alas, this is the price to pay for being anxious to become famous. A single mistake will cause eternal regret. Ko Xing sighed endlessly. I've already advised him, but he didn't listen. A simple-minded fool like him deserves this kind of lesson. I've never seen such a simple-minded person like him. Green-faced assassin and Qi Lian both sighed. Hearing their conversation, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel amused. Shun Baixin was really unlucky. Of all people to provoke, he had to provoke Xia Ji. Wasn't this just asking for trouble? By the way, what are the two of you doing in Border River this time? Lin Sun looked at Loka curiously. For an opportunity. Loka didn't hide anything and told them everything about the dark blood Black Phoenix. Lin Sun finally understood and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He was really worried that Loka was also here to kill him. Dark blood Black Phoenix? So the rumor is true. It seems that you have awakened the talent of your bloodline? Miss Lu was startled and thought about it. That's right. Loka nodded and then looked at Lin Sun with a hint of inquiry. He didn't know Miss Li's origin. This is Miss Lu, and this is Miss Loka. Lin Sun briefly introduced them to each other. When Loka learned that this sickly and beautiful woman came from a sacred place, Loka's clear eyes narrowed slightly before returning to normal. When Miss Lu learned of Loka's identity, she seemed to have guessed it long ago. I do know a little about this dark blood Black Phoenix. It's said that it was defeated by a sage from the ancient Buddhist lineage, and died. Only a strand of its soul was left, and it was sealed in the ruins of a battlefield. Miss Lu slowly said, however, I originally thought that it was just a legend, but now it seems that it should be true. Loka was obviously a little surprised. She didn't expect Miss Lu to know such secrets. Lin Sun understood her surprise, because he had already experienced how shocking Miss Li's intelligence and foundation was. Miss Loka, I have something to say about the dark blood Black Phoenix, but I don't know if I should say it, Miss Lu said. Go ahead. Loka was also very curious about how much Miss Lu knew about the dark blood Black Phoenix. Are you going with Shun Baixin to use the Shun clan's ancestral artifact, the coiling dragon cauldron, to suppress the remnant soul of the dark blood Black Phoenix? Miss Li's eyes are like torches and your foresight is divine. You even know about this. Loka's clear eyes were full of surprise. That's easy to guess. The coiling dragon cauldron is a sacred treasure refined by the ancestors of the Shun clan. It's poured with the true blood of the primordial unity green dragon. It's the most suitable to suppress the power of the dark blood Black Phoenix. Miss Lu smiled slightly, and then her expression became serious again. However, in my opinion, if you do that, it's very likely to backfire. Loka was startled and frowned. What do you mean? You know the nature of the Phoenix clan better than I do. They are noble and unsullied. If you use the coiling dragon cauldron to suppress it, you might be able to suppress the remnant soul of the dark blood Black Phoenix, but the latter would rather die than let you get what you want. As soon as Miss Li's words came out, Loka was stunned. Her beautiful face changed, and she fell into deep thought. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh in his heart. This Miss Lu was really amazing. It was hard not to admire her. Thank you for your advice. After a long time, Loka exhaled a long breath of turbid air and thanked her solemnly with gratitude. If you don't mind, I have a method that can help you solve this problem and obtain this great fortune. As soon as Miss Li's words came out, Loka was shocked and said, I'd like to hear the details. Seeing this, Lin Sun intended to avoid it. After all, such a secret was too sensitive and involved a great fortune. It was natural to avoid arousing suspicion. But to his surprise, Miss Lu stopped him and said, Child, please wait. I need your help to obtain this fortune. Me? Lin Sun was stunned. Loka was also a little surprised. How did he get involved with Lin Sun again? Yes. Miss Lu nodded seriously. Obviously, she wasn't joking. Just then, a miserable cry sounded like a ghost wailing and a wolf howling. Then, with a plop, Shun Baixian was thrown onto the deck of the treasure ship. His limbs were on the ground, and his buttocks were facing the sky. His posture was extremely embarrassing and embarrassing. Chapter 964. Suddenly, the conversation was interrupted. Lin Sun and the others all looked at Shun Baixian. Shun Baixian, a peerless genius from a family of sages, had disheveled hair, tattered clothes, and bruises all over his body. He lay on the ground on all fours, twitching as if he was suffering from epilepsy. It was a stark contrast from his arrogant attitude just now. At this time, even those who were familiar with Shun Baixian would not dare to recognize him. It was so miserable that it made people feel pity for him. Alas, this idiot has made a mistake after all. Ko Xing and the others sighed. As soon as this was said, Shun Baixian's body twitched even more violently. He faced the deck so that no one could see his expression, but everyone knew that at this moment, he was ashamed and resentful. Miss Li's expression was strange. The Shun clan was definitely an ancient clan with a glorious history. Since ancient times, there had been more than one sage from the Shun clan. In the entire ancient desolation 4 realms, the Shun clan could also be regarded as a hegemon. Their prestige was comparable to the top ancient orthodoxies in the world. As a descendant of the Shun clan, Shun Baixian was regarded as a genius like the devil incarnate. It was really sad that Shun Baixian was beaten like this. Loka's expression was also a little strange. If the outside world were to find out that this devil incarnate that caused the faces of the younger generation to turn pale at the mention of his name had been bashed to such an extent by a young girl today, it was a mystery what they would think. Are you courting death? Shun Baixian roared angrily. Being beaten by the girl was still acceptable, but now he was being ridiculed by Ko Xing and the others, which drove him crazy. But at this moment Xia Ji appeared. Her slender figure landed lightly on the deck, and an invisible aura of silence and darkness filled the air. Shun Baixian's body stiffened, and he directly lay on the ground, pretending to be dead. There was no other way, he was really beaten to the point of collapse. Lin Sun and the others were all stunned, and then they all laughed silently. Obviously, Shun Baixian had been traumatized. At this moment, when he saw Xia Ji, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. The remnant soul of the dark blood black phoenix cannot be subdued, but we can communicate with it. But before that, there is a problem that needs to be solved. What? Break the seal. In a room on the treasure ship, Lin Sun, Miss Lu, Loka, and the others sat on the floor, discussing the light rain and the dark blood phoenix. Seal? Luo Jia said, When I came this time, I brought the sect's supreme treasure, the absolute devil royal sword. It should be enough to deal with it. No. Miss Lu shook her head. That's a seal left behind by an ancient Buddhist sage. It's impossible to break it with brute force. Even the heavenly exorcism sword can't do it. Loka frowned. No. Miss Lu said firmly, if one doesn't know how to break it, no treasure can break the seal, not even a sage treasure. Suddenly, both Lin Sun and Lorger were shocked. They didn't expect that a mere seal could be so incredible. Then how does Miss Lu think we should break this seal? Luo Jia asked. That will depend on young Master Lin's means. Lady Li's clear eyes surged with wisdom. He looked at Lin Sun with a smile. Not only Luo Jia, but even Lin Sun was stunned. Without waiting for him to ask, Miss Lu said, I heard that even the king's 4 symbols forbidden formation of the Cyan Phoenix clan couldn't trap you at all at the Tao Discussion Lantern Festival. I think you must have extremely high attainments in the Tao of spiritual tattoos. Lin Sun nodded. There was nothing to hide. That's a king's forbidden formation. Although Qing Lian can't exert its full power, it can't be broken easily. If I'm not mistaken, you probably have the attainments of a spiritual tattoo guru, right? Miss Lu said with a smile. Lin Sun nodded again, but he sighed inwardly. This woman was really insightful. She could see through so many truths from so few clues. She was really amazing. Seeing this, Luo Jia was a little shocked. He suddenly realized that demon god Lin beside him was actually a first-level spiritual tattoo guru. That's easy. The seal left by the ancient Buddhist cultivators is a type of innate divine restriction. Only spiritual tattoo gurus and sages can see through its mysteries. Miss Lu spoke in a neither fast nor slow manner. At that time, so long as young master breaks this seal, Miss Luo Jia will be able to see the soul fragment of the dark blood Dark Phoenix. Speaking of this, Luo Jia completely understood. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. If he hadn't met Miss Lu this time, his search for opportunities would have been doomed to be thwarted. Lin Sun was a little puzzled. He didn't have any friendship with Luo Jia. Even if he wanted to help, he should at least give a reason, right? Miss Lu said with a smile, Don't refuse, young master. Miss Luo Jia is here to obtain the Dark Phoenix Void Destruction Technique, one of the 9 scriptures of the deity Phoenix. However, that's not the only opportunity in that sealed place. She didn't hide it, nor did she use a voice transmission. She seemed very calm. If I know the secrets correctly, there's still a good fortune about the Buddhist cultivators left in that sealed place. Luo Jia's starry eyes narrowed, and he understood tacitly. If this is true, I'm willing to give this good fortune to you as a thank you for your help. Miss Lu said with a smile, Thank you in advance. This good fortune is useless to me, but if I can obtain it, it will be of immeasurable benefit to young Master Lin's future cultivation. Lin Sun finally realized that the reason why Miss Lu was so concerned about this matter was that she wanted to help him fight for a good fortune. This made him a little surprised, but after thinking about it carefully, he realized that he had helped her resolve a crisis from the Sacred Fire sect before. She was obviously returning the favor by doing this. For the rest of the journey, under Luo Jia's guidance, everyone changed their direction. The treasure ship swept towards the other direction of the Boundary River. Even though they encountered many dangerous calamities along the way, they were able to avoid all of them without any mishap. The most serious danger he encountered was when he encountered a yellow spring grass floating in the Boundary River. This was an ominous thing that foretold horror and death. There were various legends about it in ancient times. It was said that this thing was related to the mystery of the origin of death and reincarnation. Once it appeared, even the sages could only retreat for fear of being contaminated by its aura. At that time, when Lin Sun and the others encountered this netherworld grass, if it weren't for Miss Li's timely reminder, they would almost be contaminated by the dim yellow halo released by this thing. In the end, although they narrowly avoided it, the treasure ship they were on was destroyed in an instant and disappeared without a trace. This strange scene made Lin Sun's hair stand on end. It was just a wisp of aura that silently destroyed the treasure ship, making it impossible for people to guard against it. After experiencing this, Lin Sun became more aware of the horror of the Boundary River. There were too many strange and ominous things in it. 2 days later, after eating a meal carefully prepared by Lin Sun, Xia Ji fell into a deep sleep and began the fourth recuperation of quietus. Lin Sun carefully placed Xia Ji in the wordless pagoda. During these days, the arrogant and insufferably arrogant playboy, Shun Baixian, had been very quiet. He locked himself in his room and did not go out at all. Obviously, Xia Ji's violent beating had left a great trauma in him, and he had not come out of it until now. Time passed, and a few more days passed. It had been about 10 days since Lin Sun and the others entered the Boundary River. The Sacred Fire Sect's pursuit force did not appear again, which made Miss Lu look much more relaxed. "We're here." On this day, Loka's voice sounded outside the treasure ship. When Lin Sun and the others walked up to the deck, they saw a huge whirlpool in the distance. It was dark and slowly rotating, emitting power that distorted and collapsed the surrounding void. There was a strange atmosphere of death in this area. Even the raging river was still, and only the huge whirlpool, which was as huge as an abyss, was rotating slowly, but it was also silent. Lin Sun and the others felt a kind of horror, as if there was some terrifying power hidden in the depths of the huge whirlpool. Back then, the strong dark blood phoenix who set foot on the divine path died here, and his remnant soul was sealed here. There was a trace of emotion in Luo Jia's eyes. In her hand, a pitch-black phoenix feather that seemed to be burning emitted a hazy rain of light. Its aura was actually faintly resonating with the huge vortex in the distance. Obviously, Loka had found this place through the feather of the dark blood phoenix. Otherwise, finding this place in the vast and dangerous Boundary River would be no different from finding a needle in a haystack. Someone is coming. At this moment, Lin Sun's pupils shrank, and his body suddenly emitted billowing daiqi, covering the entire treasure ship. In an instant, they seemed to have disappeared into thin air. At the same time, Loka, Miss Lu, and the others also saw a strange team suddenly appear on the other side of the huge whirlpool. It was a group of monks, and there were around 10+ of them. All of them had extremely young appearances, yet they wore black kasayas and had black prayer beads hanging around their neck. All of them had their palms pressed together while their expressions were tranquil like an ancient well, and they seemed to have solemn appearances, yet they emanated an indifferent, cold, and terrifying aura. They rode on a black lotus flower that was divided into 24 petals. It was shaped like a treasured boat, and black mist flowed out from it as it floated up and down on the muddy river water as it drifted over. The black lotus was like a boat, carrying a group of monks in black. It suddenly appeared on the Boundary River, giving people a strange and mysterious visual impact. This is the successor of the Ksitigarbha temple in the lifeless realm. Miss Li's pupils shrank. Is the rumor true? The ancient Buddhist practitioner who killed the dark blood phoenix was a Ksitigarbha Buddha? She seemed to be very surprised and lost her composure, which was rare. Ksitigarbha temple? Lifeless realm? Lin Sun and Loka felt very unfamiliar, but when they saw Miss Lu lose her composure, they also keenly sensed that the situation seemed to have changed. Could it be that this group of monks in black also came for the hidden opportunities here? Chapter 965. The Black Lotus emitted a dreamy mist as it floated on the quiet Boundary River. A group of black-robed monks stood there solemnly, carrying a trace of indifference and coldness. The scene was very strange, and it sent chills down one's spine. Tut! When they arrived before the huge whirlpool, a black-robed monk walked out and chanted in an obscure Buddhist voice. Boom! A black alms bowl soared into the sky and emanated a myriad of strands of dark divine radiance. They transformed into numerous images of Buddhas that resided in the surroundings. Vaguely, strands of ancient Sanskrit resounded. Suddenly, the whirlpool of the river that was originally spinning slowly became motionless, as if it had been imprisoned. Ksitigarbha Temple's Alaya Bo. It's really them. Miss Lu was stunned, her expression uncertain. It was easy to imagine that her emotions were destined to be turbulent. A moment later, the group of mysterious black-robed monks disappeared and entered the whirlpool. Who are they? Lin Sun could not help but ask. At this moment, he had already removed the Bian-Chi, and the figures of the group and the treasured ship appeared. They're not simple. Every time they appear, it's accompanied by slaughter and blood. Miss Lu took a deep breath and revealed a secret that had been sealed in the world. The lifeless realm was an extremely famous Pure Land for Buddhist cultivators in ancient times. There was a Buddhist force that was different from the rest of the world, and it was called Ksitigarbha Temple. Ksitigarbha Temple was different from all the other Buddhist forces in the world. It was extremely mysterious and ancient. The monks of Ksitigarbha Temple all wore black monk robes, turned black prayer beads, held black jade archives, and sat on black lotus futons to comprehend the Ksitigarbha Dharma. In ancient times, a bodhisattva-level powerhouse from Ksitigarbha Temple had once made the supreme aspiration of, "If I don't enter hell, who will?" shocking the 9 heavens and 10 earths and shocked all the saints in the world. At that time, the Buddhist cultivators from Ksitigarbha Temple were also known as adversity travelers. That was because whenever a great calamity or upheaval was about to occur, their figures would appear in the world. Naturally, a consensus was formed in the world, and that was whenever a descendant of the Ksitigarbha Temple appeared, it meant that a great calamity and upheaval was about to sweep through the world. When Miss Lu said this, she could not help but sigh. In short, this Ksitigarbha Temple is very mysterious. Ever since the ancient desolation region was shattered and turned into the 4 great worlds, its descendants have never appeared in the world again. Many people suspect that they have long been annihilated in the long river of history. I never imagined that after countless years, the successor of the Ksitigarbha Temple would actually appear once again when the great era is about to arrive. Doesn't this mean that the arrival of this unprecedented great era will be accompanied by unprecedented disasters and turmoil? Loka asked in shock. Exactly. Miss Lu nodded. This was something that could be predicted. What surprised her was that the mysterious Buddhist faction known as Ksitigarbha Temple still existed. This was a huge piece of news, and if the ancient sects were to find out about it, then they would definitely be unable to sit still. The reason was very simple. The descendants of the Ksitigarbha Temple took it as their own responsibility to transcend adversity. Anyone who they regarded as evil would be transcended by them. They did not care who you were, nor did they care which ancient force you were. As long as you were targeted by them, you would be transcended. The most terrifying thing was that the Ksitigarbha Temple's foundation was extremely terrifying. They were not afraid of any forces in the world at all. Even if they died in battle, they would continue to transcend those whom they regarded as heretics. In ancient times, countless disciples of major forces had been targeted by the descendants of the Ksitigarbha Temple and transcended them alive. Even some terrifying existences who had stepped into the sage realm had been transcended by the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva. One could imagine how abnormal this force was. There is no life and no fear, no self and no fear. Ksitigarbha Temple's path is to transcend adversity. Who would enter hell if not? Miss Lu murmured. No matter how slow Lin Sun's reaction was, he could sense that Miss Lu seemed to be extremely fearful of the Ksitigarbha Temple. Why do I feel that the Ksitigarbha Temple is very evil? According to what you said, they are clearly a group of paranoid people who transcend adversity under the guise of transcending adversity, Lin Sun joked. Don't make such a joke. If you are targeted by them, I'm afraid you, demon god Lin, will also be chased by them to transcend, Miss Lu said seriously. Lin Sun said coolly, if they are really so unreasonable, I'll just send them to hell first. Miss Lu couldn't help but laugh. She admired Lin Sun's courage. In that case, the dark blood dark phoenix that was sealed here was killed by a Buddhist sage of the Ksitigarbha Temple? Loka's heart tightened. That must be the case. Miss Li's expression changed slightly as she said this. We have to act quickly. The descendants of the Ksitigarbha Temple must have the same goal as us. Buzz. As soon as she finished speaking, Loka, who was beside her, took action. She took out a sword that shone brightly and dazzlingly. The sword was 3 feet long, but it gave people a feeling that it was connected to the 9 heavens and the netherworld. An indescribably strong and holy aura spread out, causing the void to wail as if bowing its head in submission. Absolute demon sword. It was the sword of Ling Jiankong, Loka's master. It was a sword of the divine path with earth-shattering power. Swish! An invisible aura of the divine path spread out from the sword, causing the huge river whirlpool to be sealed in an instant. Let's go! Loka took the lead and rushed over. Lin Sun, Miss Lu, and Shun Baixian, who had been silent from the beginning to the end, followed closely behind. As for Ko Xing and the rest, they stayed behind and waited in the dark. Their strength was somewhat lacking, and entering the whirlpool would put their lives at risk. Whoosh! Entering the whirlpool was like falling through clouds and mist. The surroundings were boundless, and they couldn't see anything clearly. Their ears were filled with the sound of the void shaking. After an unknown period of time, a wisp of light appeared before Lin Sun's eyes, and he realized that he was about to arrive at the ruins where the Dark Blood Phoenix's remnant soul was sealed. However, right when he was just about to take action, an unexpected event occurred abruptly. A demon-subduing pestle swept through the sky, and it gave rise to a dark and terrifying glow that covered the sky. It carried great momentum and emitted an ear-piercing howl. It was a black-clothed monk. His face that was firm like iron carried a wisp of a unique coldness, and he was like the legendary fearless Arhat. "You're courting death." Something unexpected occurred. Before Lin Sun could make a move, someone had already taken the initiative to launch an attack. This person carried a dazzling golden spear and attacked violently in an extremely ferocious and fierce manner. Shockingly, it was Shun Baixian. Clang! The black-clothed monk that launched a sneak attack was actually forcefully blasted back, and the demon-subduing pestle in his hand buzzed and almost flew out of his hand. Shun Baixian didn't show any mercy after gaining the upper hand. His entire body was dazzling and surged with terrifying divine radiance. His spear splashed out, and he seemed to have the momentum to sweep through the world. Bang! In the blink of an eye, the black-clothed monk coughed up blood and let out a muffled groan as his body smashed fiercely onto the ground. Right at this moment, Lin Sun and the others finally saw clearly that the bottom of the whirlpool was actually a ruined and desolate world of ruins, and it was like an abandoned secret realm. The heavens and the earth here were dim, and the air was suffused with a bloody and murderous aura that hadn't dissipated after tens of thousands of years, causing the hearts of all to tremble. You, Baldy, don't learn good things, but instead learn from others to launch a sneak attack. How can you be so shameless? In the void, Shun Baixian was like a god of war, and his entire body flowed with golden divine radiance. At this moment, he was indeed ferocious to the extreme, and he deserved to be regarded as a genius that was regarded as a devil incarnate. The golden spear in his hand transformed into a myriad of spear shadows that smashed the black-clothed monk to the point that he couldn't even raise his head, and he was constantly struck flying while coughing up blood. Lin Sun and the others were stunned, and their expressions were strange. Ever since he'd been ruthlessly beaten and ravaged by the godlike girl Xiaji, Shun Baixian had been very gloomy all along the way. He hadn't said a single word, and he seemed to be in low spirit. Who would have thought that at this moment he would explode? It was as if he was venting the emotions that had been suppressed in his heart for a long time, and he was venting all his grievances, humiliation, and resentment on his opponent. Die! Shun Baixian roared, and his bearing was insolent. The golden spear directly pierced through the black-clothed monk's chest, and the monk's body was sent flying into the air as a rain of blood rained down. The blood was splattering, but it couldn't extinguish the anger that had erupted in Shun Baixian's heart. He'd been suppressing it for too long, and he was about to suffer internal injuries. At this time, Xiaji, the girl who had traumatized him so much, wasn't here, so he finally dared to vent his anger without restraint. Unfortunately, this black-clothed monk from the Xitigarbha temple had run into his hands, and his fate was destined to be tragic. However, Lin Sun and the others wouldn't blame Shun Baixian for killing indiscriminately. This black-clothed monk had been hiding in the dark, and he'd suddenly rushed out to attack them. From beginning to end, he hadn't said a word, and his hostility was too obvious. Whoosh whoosh. The sound of something tearing through the air rang out in the distance, and another 2 black-clothed monks swept over. Their expressions were indifferent, and their faces were cold, as if they had no emotions. Even when they saw their companions being killed, they didn't feel the slightest emotion. Clang! Clang! As soon as the 2 appeared, they didn't say a word. One took out a blood-red Buddhist staff, and the other waved a black staff, and they rushed over violently. Austere. Cold. Not sloppy at all. This wasn't like the merciful Buddhist cultivators of the present world at all. They were decisive in killing, swift in action, and extremely terrifying. Shun Baixian was worried that he hadn't vented his anger. Seeing this, he shouted, and rushed over with the spear in his hand. For a time, the world was in chaos. The void exploded, and the spirit of conquest soared into the sky. But soon, the battle came to an end. Shun Baixian showed a peerless demeanor that far surpassed his peers. He was extremely domineering and arrogant. With a single spear, he shattered the internal organs of the 2 black-clothed monks, and they died on the spot. The scene was extremely bloody, and Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Shun Baixian really deserved to be a freak who wasn't weaker than Yu Linkong. At that time, if Xia Ji hadn't intervened, even Lin Sun would have had to spend some effort to take him down. Bah, a bunch of trash. None of you can fight. Shun Baixian seemed very dissatisfied, and his anger hadn't dissipated. If you have the strength, save it for now. You'll have to fight later. Hurry up and go. Luo Jia was a little anxious, worried that the descendants of the Xitigarbha temple would snatch the good fortune first. Chapter 966. While speaking, Loka took out a feather of the dark blood phoenix and shook it gently in the void. Buzz. In this world, an obscure sound of the Tao responded. It came from extremely far away, and at the same time, a grand bell sound accompanied it. It was powerful and heavy. In an instant, everyone saw black divine flames burning in the distant horizon, dyeing the sky with a layer of deep black, like a corner of the eternal night. Clang! The bell was like a morning bell and evening drum, but it also sounded like a warning to the world. It cleansed people's body and mind, making Lin Sun and the others feel enlightened. Amazing! Lin Sun was shocked. They didn't hesitate and flew into the distance. Very soon, they saw an ancient temple that stood towering on the ruins. The dilapidated walls of the ancient temple showed signs of deterioration. Traces of age could be seen everywhere. Above it, black flames that looked like they were burning appeared. Clang! When they arrived here, the bell ringing became more melodious and vigorous, like the chanting of Buddha. It made Lin Sun and the others' chi and blood roar, as if they were being cleansed and purified. The gate of the ancient temple was closed, but there was a sacred Buddha aura spreading, making the place solemn like a pure land. This isn't a sealed place. Why is there an ancient temple here? Shun Baixian was stunned. It should have been built by the ancient saint of Xitigarbha temple. Perhaps the remnant soul of the dark blood phoenix is sealed in here. Miss Lu was also uncertain. Although she knew many secrets, she had never seen it in person. It was also her first time coming to this mysterious relic. I can feel it. The remnant soul of the dark blood phoenix is inside. Loka seemed very excited at this moment, his eyes sparkling. This ancient temple is the seal. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun spread out his divine soul and sensed something unusual. The ancient temple was silent, dilapidated, and mottled. It looked like it would collapse at any time, but it was covered by an invisible restrictive force. The restrictive force's aura was so shocking that it made Lin Sun's heart palpitate. He sensed extreme danger. Miss Lu took out her string of purple bells and shook them gently. Wisps of purple sound waves spread out, and when they touched the door of the ancient temple, a blazing Buddhist glow erupted. The Buddhist light was pure, peaceful, vast, and boundless, yet it revealed a dark black color that caused others to feel extremely horrified instead of at ease. This is the innate godly forbidden ground. Miss Li's brows were filled with solemnity. If you want to enter this door, you have to crack the profundities within. If you use brute force, you will instead trigger a terrifying killing tribulation. The consequences are unimaginable. At this time, everyone looked at Lin Sun, because they all knew that he was the only grandmaster of spiritual tattoos in the field. Let me try. Lin Sun pondered for a while and began to run the power of the spirit to further explore and sense the mysterious dilapidated old temple. In an instant, he noticed the difference. In his senses, this ancient temple had completely changed. There was a resplendent Buddhist light that covered every inch of the ancient temple, and its aura was like an abyss. It seemed holy and grand, but it hid an incomparably terrifying killing tribulation. The fluctuations of the restriction intertwined and deduced into balls of black Buddhist light. To Lin Sun's surprise, in each ball of Buddhist light, there seemed to be a shadow of Buddha sitting cross-legged. Some of them were smiling while holding flowers, some were looking down, some were solemn, and some were glaring at the world. In just an instant, Lin Sun's heart trembled. He felt a kind of supreme and oppressive aura, which made his soul feel like it was about to be frozen. Suppress. Without hesitation, Lin Sun ran the meditating magic and visualized the 3 signs of the sun, moon, and stars. Only then did he dispel the depression and discomfort in his soul. At this moment, when he tried to sense it again, the ancient temple was different. Every inch of the restriction was branded with dense and strange black spiritual inscriptions. They were densely packed and innumerable, and it was these inscriptions that constructed the mysterious restriction. Obviously, if he wanted to enter the ancient temple, he must first see through the mystery of these spiritual tattoos. Everyone, please protect me. Lin Sun took a deep breath. This restriction was so terrifying that he had never encountered it before. It was extremely obscure and difficult to understand. When deducing, he must not be distracted in the slightest. Don't worry. With me here, no one can disturb you. At this moment, Lorga showed unprecedented determination. Her clear eyes were like lightning, revealing an unprecedented majesty. She still needed to rely on Lin Sun to enter this place, so there must be no accident. Humph. Shun Baixian seemed to be very unhappy and snorted coldly. However, when he met Lorga's cold gaze, he finally sighed and said, "All right, I'll reluctantly help this guy this time." "Be careful of the descendants of Xidagarba Temple," Miss Lu reminded. Miss Lu reminded him. They might have already entered this ancient temple, but it's impossible for all of them to have entered. I can't wait for them to jump out. When Shun Baixian heard this, he was a little tempted and his fighting spirit surged. The anger in his heart had not been completely vented. While talking, Lin Sun had already sat cross-legged on the ground and began to meditate. He was no stranger to spiritual tattoos, but this was the first time he was trying to crack a restriction that was suspected to be left by a sage. This made him feel even more pressure. However, as time went by, he was completely immersed in the fluctuations of the restriction covering the ancient temple. For other Xiuzhi, Jinji might be a mysterious and terrifying power that drew upon the power of the heavens and the earth, turning something rotten into something wondrous and unfathomable. But in the eyes of a spiritual tattoo guru like Lin Sun, restrictions were just a kind of formation power composed of spiritual tattoos. The more difficult it was to crack, the more precious a learning opportunity it was for a spiritual tattoo guru. As long as he could crack it, it was equivalent to solving an answer. He could obtain the mystery and mystery hidden in it and use it for his own use, thus improving his attainments in spiritual tattoos. Time went by. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. During this process, Lin Sun sat on the ground with his back straight, his expression calm and tranquil. There was a kind of ethereal aura, and he did not make any more movements. It was like a clay Buddha statue sitting upright in front of this ancient Buddhist temple. Miss Lu played with a string of purple bells in her hand. She did not show the slightest impatience and looked very leisurely and calm. Loka's eyes were cold, and he was always on guard and alert. The world was gloomy, and the ancient temple was dilapidated. It seemed very quiet and serene, but it made people feel an indescribable oppressive and dangerous aura. Shun Baixian was a little impatient. He had been waiting for the descendants of the Xitigarbha temple to jump out, but there was no movement at all. This made him very anxious. Aren't these bald donkeys called the adversity-transcending walkers? Why aren't they coming to transcend me? Shun Baixian was very dissatisfied. Young Master Shun, you can't say such things. The Xitigarbha temple's background is unfathomable. If they think you're a heretic, I'm afraid you'll face the danger of being transcended for the rest of your life, Miss Lu reminded him. I'm not afraid. The Great Era War is coming. I don't care if it's the Xitigarbha temple or the Tianzong temple. If they dare to block my path, I'll just kill them all. Shun Baishuan's face was full of arrogance and disdain. He wasn't boasting, but it was just his nature, and it came from his heart. Whether it was intentional or not, Miss Lu deliberately provoked him. Then let me ask you, didn't you want to borrow Lin Sun's treasures to play with? Why did you suddenly change your mind? Sure enough, Shun Baixian seemed to have been poked in his sore spot. His arrogant expression suddenly froze, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Then, he said expressionlessly, "You don't have to provoke me. I've never changed my mind about anything I've said before. It's just that it's not the right time now." Hee. Miss Lu revealed a thought-provoking smile. "What are you laughing at? Is it that funny?" Shun Baixian was instantly infuriated. He felt that Miss Li's smile was too hateful, and it was clearly mocking him. "I'm laughing. Wasn't it just a defeat by a young girl? Why don't you dare to face her? Could it be that you're really afraid?" Miss Lu said leisurely. "You." Shun Baishuan's face turned extremely ugly, and he was fuming with anger. At this moment, Miss Li's voice sounded in his ears. "Get ready, the enemy is coming." Almost at the same time, Shun Baixian felt that the ground under his feet suddenly burst, and a cold light suddenly appeared, rushing out like a shocking rainbow. Die! Shun Baixian was not frightened, but delighted. While dodging, he stabbed the golden spear in his hand fiercely. With a harsh collision, the cold light was smashed by the spear. Boom! The spear stabbed into the ground, forcibly breaking open an unfathomable hole. Cracks appeared on the ground nearby, and the soil was sent flying. With a swish, a black figure rushed out, but it did not rush to Shun Baixian, but to Lin Sun, who was nearby. It was a black-robed monk. He moved as fast as lightning, holding a black crescent spade, and his speed was incredibly fast. But there was someone faster than him. Luo Jia, who had been waiting for a long time, used the devil-slaying ultimate sword as soon as he made his move. The brilliant sword blade covered the sky and the earth, and it was filled with unparalleled divine power. Puff! The black-robed monk had no time to dodge, and he was drowned by the vast sword chi. His whole body, along with the crescent spade in his hand, was instantly destroyed by the sword chi. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air. The overbearing power of the devil-slaying ultimate sword, a divine treasure, could be seen from this. Whoosh! But at the same time, several black shadows rushed out from different positions, some rushing to kill Miss Lu, and some rushing to kill Lin Sun. Shun Baixian had already felt a little ashamed when Luo Jia killed the enemy first. Now that he had finally seized such an opportunity, how could he neglect it? Suppress! Amidst his loud shout, a coiling dragon cauldron appeared above Shun Baishuan's head. It radiated divine might that shot into the heavens, and it seemed capable of suppressing the universe and stabilizing the world. It caused the entire world to tremble. Boom! The cauldron glowed and made a roaring sound, and there was a faint sound of the great way. Around the cauldron, hundreds of millions of thick Taoist light drifted and suppressed. The coiling dragon cauldron, the ancestral sacred treasure of the Shun clan. At this moment, Shun Baishuan's power was like that of a god, as if he was holding the cauldron down through the ages. Puff, puff. Before those figures could react, their bodies cracked inch by inch, and then exploded fiercely. Blood rained like a waterfall, splashing between heaven and earth. Chapter 967. A group of sneaky scoundrels is nothing more than this. In the void, Shun Baixian was in high spirit. He looked up to the sky and laughed, thinking that he was the most dazzling one at this moment. Since he was defeated by summer solstice, he had been forbearing, thinking that it was a great shame, which made him unable to raise his head until now. He had been suppressed for too long and could no longer bear to be robbed of the limelight by others. He wanted to take this opportunity to wash away the shame and reappear his peerless demeanor. He wanted to let Miss Lo, who was mocking him, open her eyes wide and see that he, Shun Baixian, was not someone who could be laughed at and slandered casually. What a delinquent youth! Go to hell! Noisy! Shut up! However, Luo Jia and Miss Lu didn't give him face and scolded him together. You disturbed Lin Sun. You are the culprit. Shun Baishuan's laughter stopped abruptly. Because he stopped too suddenly, he choked on his breath and almost fainted. His body shook in the void and he almost fell down. It was so annoying. What kind of attitude was this? Shun Baishuan's face was cloudy and uncertain. He was really going crazy, feeling that his dignity was completely trampled on. Child Shun, I have to apologize to you, Miss Lu said. Shun Baixian was stunned and his expression eased a lot. This woman was not bad. She knew that if she took the initiative to admit her mistake, he could let bygones be bygones. The reason why I provoked you just now was that I wanted to take this opportunity to lure out the descendants of Dizong Temple hiding in the dark. Obviously we succeeded, Miss Lu said with a smile. You. Shun Baixian suddenly felt depressed again and said angrily, Did you just use me as bait? I saw that you couldn't wait to kill the enemy, so I played a little trick. Are you unhappy now? Miss Lu asked. Shun Baixian was so angry that he almost spat out blood. Even killing the enemy was calculated by others. He was totally used as a gun. He thought that he could wash away the shame by taking this opportunity. It turned out that it was all a trick. For the first time, Shun Baixian felt that he was really unlucky to enter the Boundary River this time. First, he was beaten up by a girl, and then he was tricked by Miss Lu like a fool. Why were these women so hateful now? At this time, Lin Sun, who had been sitting cross-legged, suddenly stood up. His black clear eyes surged with frightening light. Is it okay? Luo Jia asked. I can only say that you can get started. Looking at the closed door of the ancient temple, Lin Sun murmured, This restriction is extremely mysterious and extraordinary. I can't see through all its mysteries only by deducing from the outside. So you're saying that we can only enter while cracking the code? Miss Lu pondered. Yes. Lin Sun nodded. After wasting so much time, this is all you managed to crack? Shun Baixian was dissatisfied at once and reprimanded Lin Sun. I think you don't live up to your title of Grandmaster of Spiritual Tattoos. Why don't you do it if you can? Lin Sun said with a smile. Shun Baixian had just opened his mouth when he was fiercely stared at by Luo Jia's threatening gaze. This caused his expression to turn sluggish as he snorted resentfully and didn't say anything else. Then let's move. We've killed 7 successors of the Dizong Temple, but these are all small fries. I'm afraid some of the more powerful characters have already entered, Miss Lu said. Immediately, Lin Sun stepped forward to lead the way. With a wave of his sleeve, streaks of divine light turned into spiritual tattoos and rushed into the void. On the way in front of them, obscure restriction fluctuations suddenly emerged, and the Buddha's light was shining brightly. It was a kind of solemn and holy black Buddha's light, exuding a chilling and terrifying aura. It could be foreseen that if they acted without authorization just now, they were destined to be killed by this restriction. Shun Baixian was stunned and fell into a rare silence, because he also saw that this restriction was so terrible that even he felt numb on the scalp. "Let's go." Lin soon took out the broken blade and wrapped it around his body, with a trace of solemnity between his eyebrows. The others followed closely behind. Clatter, miraculously, as Lin soon moved forward, those restrictions receded to both sides like water wave. Obviously, the mystery and killing intent in them had been seen through by Lin soon. The door of the ancient temple opened silently, and there was a bright light inside, like the Buddha's light, which was very sacred. When Lin soon and others went up the stairs and entered the gate of the ancient temple, the scene in front of them suddenly changed, as if they had entered a mysterious world. The sky here was as dark as ink, like a curtain of eternal night. Wisps of Buddha's light drifted in the void, faintly giving people an ethereal and peaceful solemn atmosphere. Looking around, this place was also very dilapidated, with broken fences and broken tiles, withered vegetation, silent and barren, like a Buddhist Taoist temple that had been abandoned for many years. "It's those bald donkeys!" Shun Baixian shouted. In the depths of the temple, there was an ancient black Buddha shrine. At this moment, 5 monks in black were sitting cross-legged, holding black prayer beads and chanting something in a low voice. Lin Sun and others were also shocked. The black Buddha shrine was very old, and there was nothing special about it, but what was enshrined in it was not a Buddha statue, but a black phoenix. The black phoenix's wings were folded, its body was huddled into a ball, and its eyes were closed tightly, like a divine fetus. Its body was burning with black divine light, and strands of strange and twisted Taoist patterns were flashing and flowing in the black divine light, which was extremely mysterious. "I feel it. The remnant soul is silent in it." Luo Jiao was a little excited and couldn't wait to rush over directly. "Be careful," Lin Sun hurriedly reminded her. This place was covered with dense restrictions, and one wrong step could lead to unexpected death. Since ancient times, the phoenix is immortal and can be reborn. In this case, the powerful dark blood phoenix who was killed obviously intended to carry out nirvana at the moment of death. Miss Li's clear eyes were full of wisdom, and she seemed to be thinking about something. "At this time, don't talk nonsense. Let's kill them directly." Shun Baixian was murderous and couldn't wait. At this time, the 5 monks in black sitting cross-legged on the ground seemed to be alarmed, and they all stood up and looked over. In an instant the atmosphere was tense. "Fellow Taoists, this is the forbidden land of holy meteorite of our Earth Treasury Temple. Please leave quickly or you will be in big trouble," the leading monk in black said. His skin was white, his eyes were clear, and his forehead was smooth. His posture was as straight as a pine tree, but there was a kind of palpitating indifference and loneliness in his expression. He stood there casually, but he gave people a kind of majestic momentum, like an arhat standing on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, and was crossing the calamity of all living beings. Just a glance made Lin Sun and the others feel a chill in their hearts. They realized that this young monk was definitely a formidable enemy. Miss Lu suddenly said, holding 18 pearls, "It seems that this fellow Taoist is one of the 18 disciples of Earth Treasury Temple of this generation?" While speaking, she secretly transmitted a message to Lin Sun and the others to explain. Since ancient times, the 18 disciples of Earth Treasury Temple represented 18 top figures who had cast Arhat Golden Body, and each of them had mastered a supreme inheritance. The 18 disciples were divided into 3 divisions, namely the 6 senses division, the 6 roots division, and the 6 dust division. Each division had 6 strong Arhat karmic rank masters, and together they formed the inheritance of the 18 disciples of Earth Treasury Temple. In short, this is the peerless talent among the descendants of Earth Treasury Temple, and his strength is extremely strong. After this explanation, Lin Sun and the others understood. They looked at the young monk with much more serious eyes.